is an early 2000s sci-fi series that I believe deserves a closer look. For its time, and I believe still to this day, Fringe as a series pushes the boundaries of the typical J.J. Abrams formula, but unlike many of his better known projects, Fringe actually manages to land on its feet with most of the concepts it bites off. Lost! Taking many of the tropes from this era of television, Fringe manages to push their bounds far beyond what I thought was possible for TV at the time, and to distances so far and great, I really don't think we saw similar levels of success until the highest points of the MCU. Yes, really. Fringe takes on multiple timelines, multiverses, and alternate dimensions, and it never becomes so overwhelming it feels like Fringe entirely loses the plot. What I'm really trying to say is Fringe is a complex show that has aged remarkably well. Beyond that, the show on a more personal level is insanely relevant to my own developing love for the sci-fi genre. Before I got into X-Files or Twilight Zone, Fringe is how I first realized I have a strong love of serialized science fiction, resulting in me understanding the feeling of existential dread at far too young of an age. I'm pretty sure this show did end up giving me nightmares. There's episodes with worms bursting out of people's stomachs and face holes becoming not holes, and my dad just thought all of that was a-okay. Truly, it lives up to the title of this video, a flawed masterpiece. And by the end of this video, I hope you will understand why I feel that way, because this video is going to be thorough. My goal here is to walk you through not only why this show is important to me, but yes, the sci-fi genre as a whole, and hopefully spark a renewed interest in Fringe. We're going to talk about the larger plots of the show, while leaving plenty on the cutting room floor. So yes, if you're super sensitive to spoilers like a little baby poo, there are going to be plenty of them within this video. Though, I think I am leaving out certainly more than enough to still watch this video and then go watch Fringe and absolutely enjoy it. I can't even say that much about one of the best characters, Charlie, because unfortunately the show criminally underuses him and gets rid of him far too soon. They did you dirty, Kirk Avocado. I don't know how to say your last name, but you're Kirk Avocado. Also, to keep things fun as I go through the seasons, at the end of each one, I am going to rate the best and worst Fringe concepts from that season. Of course, we're going to be talking about the character development, how characters change and grow, and the successes and failures that the show finds within its cast. Because yes, there is success and failure here. The fun part though is sometimes the success and failures are in different dimensions, so we get to do a bit of compare and contrast. So way oversimplifying a plot that gets convoluted as hell, Fringe at its core is about a team within the FBI titled Fringe Division that looks into scientific anomalies occurring mostly within the Boston to New York area for a reason actually justified in the plot. But who exactly composes this crafty crew? The brain of the show is Olivia Dunham, who is here to solve Fringe events and stop hanging out with her sister after season 1, because that plot line goes absolutely nowhere and it's as irrelevant as Peter's criminal background. A lot of you might know Anna Torv because she was recently in the smash hit The Last of Us show. She was also in the criminally underwatched Mindhunter, which you should absolutely check out as well. But the character she plays here, Olivia Dunham, travels through timelines and universes, expanding well beyond a Buffy-type trope and becoming what feels like a force of will, smashing into scientists turned gods. If there was any justice in the world, Anna Torv would have been propelled into triple A-list stardom after Fringe due to her performance of Olivia Dunham, who is reserved and not nearly as over the top as other characters within this show, but it's in that reserved performance that Anna Torv is able to find so much depth to this character. And in my opinion, she's not even the best performance in the show. That, of course, goes to John Noble. Now, if Olivia is the brains, Walter Bishop is the heart of Fringe. Played, as I mentioned, by John Noble of Grape Tomato defiling fame. Get it off the screen from behind me, Jillian? I cannot take that. Stop it! No! But don't worry if you're afraid you're only gonna see Denethor when you look at Walter Bishop. Absolutely not. John Noble just completely transforms, and the fact that he was not nominated for an Emmy once for his portrayal of Walter Bishop is so insane that it has kind of just become a meme within the fandom that if you bring up John Noble's performance, someone's gonna then say, and he wasn't even nominated for an Emmy.
Hello, Walter.
I thought you'd be fatter.
You thought I would be fatter? Excellent.
Walter Bishop is my personal favorite premise for a redemption arc in all of fiction. Not just TV, not just sci-fi, fiction. Especially because the show itself does not pull its punches when it comes to really establishing how big a bag of shit Walter Bishop was, and in some ways still is. You see, old Wally here used to do some really horrific stuff. He was a mad scientist with an ego the size of a god. The consequences of his actions stretch far beyond the lab assistant he's responsible for the death of. And as a result, Walter Bishop has been locked up in an insane asylum for the last 17 years where he's completely lost his mind. He is now just insane and has lost a ton of his memories for reasons we'll get into. But once the research Walter was working on all those years ago starts turning up in the hands of various mysterious terrorist organizations, the FBI, following a lead, decides it is worth removing him from the asylum and having Walter help co-found the Fringe division so they can continue to undo some of the harm that he is now responsible for being done. The only way the institution will let him go, though, is in the care of a relative.
Unless signed out by a legal guardian who must be, once again, a relative.
What are you asking me to... No. Guardian? No. Forget it.
He'll do it.
No, I will not.
And that's how his son gets pulled into the narrative, Peter Bishop, who we'll get to. But for now, that means this madman is Earth's greatest hope.
I just pissed myself.
Oh yeah, and he also loves his psychotics. The guy, LSD, mushrooms, and ayahuasca, just on the regular. Because, you know, who doesn't want an all-powerful mad scientist tripping balls all the time?
Let's make some LSD.
And that's pretty hard to redeem, right? Like, you're not gonna be on the side of this guy. The problem is here, he's played by John Noble masterfully. And John Noble decided that whether you want to or not, you are going to both sympathize and fall in love with Walter Bishop. Now, I know what you're thinking. Isn't Walter the brains then, and Olivia the heart? No. Not at all. Brilliantly, when it comes to how the show operates, yes, Walter is a super genius, but the emotional range this show achieves is largely due to the characters' relationships with Walter and his long-lasting damaging effects on the lives of others. Olivia is the brain. There are problems that Walter provides the means to solve, but Olivia is the captain of the ship. She leads the momentum of this crew. Now let's move on to the rest of the cast. Peter Bishop. A guy who is here. I'm kidding, but Peter's performance by Joshua Jackson is fine. It's just standing amongst a cast that includes on a tour of John Noble and Lance Riddick, fine sticks out a little bit. There's absolutely moments where Peter's performance does shine, mostly in his chemistry with John Noble and the fantastic writing around the father-son dynamic between the two. There are moments that on every rewatch of Fringe bring tears to my eyes because of how special the Peter-Walter growth is here. If you have a soft spot for father-son dynamics in TV shows, holy God, is this gonna do it for you. Fortunately though, in the later seasons, not only does Joshua Jackson kind of find his comfort zone with Peter as a performer, but the writers kind of figure out what to do with him, the best of which always revolve around an abused son trying to come to terms with the fact that he is now responsible for his father. Personality-wise though, Peter, as I mentioned, is a criminal. He's also super smart. He is the son of Walter Bishop, but his intelligence more lies in the engineering range. But I am sure there are fans of Fringe out there who like Peter even more than Olivia. It's probably just one guy, but I want to give that one guy a shout out. How you doing, that one guy? Up next we have Asterix, or Astrid. She is Olivia Dunham's assistant and also a member of the FBI joining the Fringe division. And she is the one person outside of Olivia and Peter who is truly able to emotionally bond with Walter. And the difference of her perspective is fascinating because of the entire cast of the show. She is the one person who isn't as deeply a victim of Walter. She is someone who is meeting him fresh in the state he is currently in, not who he was. This allows her to see him for exactly who he currently is. A desperate, lonely, sad man who doesn't even fully comprehend the scale of the crimes he committed, but is fervently trying to make up for them. And Astrid, especially in later seasons when they start utilizing this fantastic actress to her full effect, really operates well as kind of the everyman stand-in. The Fringe crew are all exceptional people, Astrid included, but she's just a bit more grounded than the rest, so she is who you relate to the most, in my experience, in the Fringe division. In terms of just like, you know, the reaction to the insane they see on a daily, weekly basis. Genuinely, overall, Astrid's probably my third favorite character in Fringe in terms of personality, especially after they get rid of Charlie way too early. Charlie, I miss you. Speaking of, let's just establish who Charlie is. Charlie is an FBI agent kind of circling the border of Fringe. He, at least in this universe, never formally joins and just acts as kind of a liaison between Fringe and the resources the FBI can offer. I can't spend too much more time talking about him because he's just not that big a player, and it hurts to say. I will say though, Kirk, if you're watching this video, I'd love to hire you to narrate one of my books. Your voice, oh my God.
Well, somewhat doesn't sound good. Is it a cow?
Next up, we have the head of Fringe Division, and you've been waiting for this, Lieutenant Broyles, played by the legendary Lance Riddick. Not only is this man a pillar of acting amongst pillars, but he plays 3 characters in this show. R. Broyles, Other Universe Broyles, and Pilot Episode Broyles, who is a sexist and just totally flips his character after the first couple episodes. I feel like in the pilot, they thought his character was gonna be one thing, then Lance Riddick was Lance Riddick, and they were like, oh no, we need to make him way more likable and a bigger part of the show. So they just have this 180 flip you're able to see even in season 1, and while it is an inconsistency, I appreciate it because I would prefer a likable Lieutenant Broyles than the one we get in the pilot. All right, so you've made it to nearly starting getting into the story here. There's just a couple more miscellaneous points I couldn't easily weave into the script. I want to get out of the way because if I don't bring them up, people will comment it ad nauseum. One, there is a Wheel of Time actor playing an extra in Fringe that I just happened to notice in the background at one point, and when we get there, I will point them out. Speaking of early performances from prominent actors, Chadwick Boseman shows up for a couple of episodes and is just as charismatic and fantastic in his more minor part as you'd expect him to be. And he's not even the most famous person who's in Fringe in a minor part because Royal Megan is here. Princess, I don't know how to address her properly. I think they were trying to make her a major character with the way she's introduced, but then they quickly realized that it wasn't a good fit and they just write her out because she's here and then she is gone. And then finally, maybe the most viral element to especially marketing within the Fringe show meta, we have observers. Inspired by the conspiracy theory of the Men in Black, observers are hidden in every single episode until they are not hidden and they become an integral part of the show. It is so much fun to watch this show with your eyes glued to the screen, just trying to find the observer every episode. And really fun, they were actually a part of the early marketing for Fringe where they would hide observers in other shows, which I think is just so cool and so much fun. They're always bald, but not every bald person is an observer. For example, Lieutenant Broyles, bald, not an observer. This guy, just a bald guy from a random stock photo on the internet, not an observer. There's a lot of bald people in the show. I'll make sure to let you know every time they're an observer. But that is Fringe, baby. And without any further ado, season 1. I'm going to start doing better from here on out, and I'm going to do a little bit more caffeine to make your job easier, Julian. That just splashed into my nose. All right. God damn, that got sticky. God damn it. God, why is that itching my nose? It's like causing an itch in my... This is an anti-Prime ad. I don't know what the f is in that, but now my nose itches a lot. episode 1 starts off with what looks like a biological attack on an airplane. This quickly is shown to be tied into research that is scientifically just way more advanced than anything that should be available for even the most advanced terrorist organizations. That is the catalyst that causes the Fringe team to assemble.
This tank was the best. And a 2-year-old Bossaurus.
A what?
A cow. He wants a cow.
Is he joking?
Genetically, humans and cows are separated by only a couple lines of DNA. So it's an ethical test subject.
Where'd you learn that? MIT?
No, actually. I picked that up reading books.
So in episode 1, after Walter is taken out of the mental institution, he is able to help Olivia see into the mind of her dying lover so that she can then see the face of the man who detonated an explosive, exposing him to horrendous chemicals that were based off of Walter's research.
I'm so sorry that I can't offer you a less dangerous solution.
What do you mean?
Didn't I mention it?
Whatever you think you said, you didn't say.
That it is possible to synchronize the fields of two distinct minds to allow the sharing of information across the unconscious state. Like a string between two tin cans.
You know what's great about that is that it's completely insane.
It's not an exact science.
It's not even science.
You can do that if they haven't been dead for longer than 6 hours.
Right, because after 6 hours, that's when they're really dead.
You could access his memories, assuming there's no brain damage, and you'd be heavily drugged.
What sort of drugs?
Oh, a mix of ketamine, neurontin, lysergic acid diethylamide.
That last one's LSD, by the way.
After apprehending the suspect and utilizing Walter, they are of course able to help Olivia's lover, John Scott, return to full health. Except for, he's a bad guy. So after he has gotten better in the hospital, he actually kills the man they arrested. Olivia figures out the betrayal and a chase ensues that results in John Scott dying in a car crash. Olivia's lover and the pilot lays lead in her arms. At the end of the episode, we see Massive Dynamic. The evil corporation has taken John Scott's body and is implied they're going to probe his mind based off some information we got from Walter earlier in the episode being repeated about dead bodies' minds being able to be probed as long as they haven't been dead for more than 6 hours. Peter agrees to stay and watch over Walter because who wouldn't want to be around Olivia? She is just the best. Even at the cost of your crazy dad walking around apparently naked all the time, that is a point the show reiterates so often.
He was awake till 5 in the morning, reciting the chemical compositions of his favorite beverages to me. That was right after he finished lecturing me on how I'd squandered my above-average intellect and my substantial education, all while he was standing there naked.
But more importantly, I guess depending on your priorities, we get the first mention of the pattern, a series of mysterious events that have been happening around the world, or more localized to Boston and New York regularly, at least for the events of the actual show, that traditional science has a difficult time explaining. It's almost like a super smart mad scientist unleashed some pretty terrible stuff on the world and now we're reaping the consequences. Who could it be? Obviously, all of this kind of points to Massive Dynamic, this super conglomerate being the bad guy. I mean, Olivia repeatedly just in the first 2 episodes is having these encounters with the acting CEO of Massive Dynamic. No, not Walter's lab partner who owns the company. William Bell is just missing, but instead, someone who knows William Bell and Walter Bishop apparently quite well from their past, acting CEO Nina Sharp, who has like a robot cyborg hand that's powered by basically an arc reactor that was made by William Bell, establishing that he has the same level of genius as Walter Bishop. But they are not the bad guys. Don't get me wrong, Massive Dynamic are bad guys, but they're not the bad guys. That goes to a terrorist organization called ZFT, and that is where Fringe Division will really be tested. But this brings us finally to episode 2. After episode 1 has a more cinematic approach, the show seems to put its front foot back a little into a comfortable spot to help establish a more familiar base for its audience, which I think is a really smart decision. Though that being said, there is of course so many seeds already planted, and the show's pretty good about distracting you from it, so it's always stuff you do catch on a rewatch. For example, episode 2 starts off with a sex worker impregnated with a super baby that is being born mere minutes after conception. But blink and you'll miss this guy in the background, who is basically the most important non-central character to the show. Observers are just bald guys. This one's an observer. Now a team made up of a criminal in debt to the mafia, a mad scientist currently tripping on psychotics, and an FBI agent suffering from PTSD must figure out who this killer is and why he seems to have about to been doing a medical experiment on this sex worker.
Do you have any cocaine?
Cocaine? No, I don't have any cocaine.
But after the Fringe division enters the hospital where the sex worker died, the Fringe team discovers that the baby actually grew into an old man and died of natural causes in roughly 30 minutes. How did it gain the mass to turn into a fully grown old man from the size of a fetus? I assume this old man is hollow, like my heart. But this comfortable formula really begins to take form as we see Walter begins to figure out what happened here. It turns out there is a man responsible for creating this killer who now has a sci-fi need for these killings. And this killer is actually utilizing some of Walter's old research, where Walter tried to figure out how to rapidly grow super soldiers. That's all kinds of screwed up and has even worse implications for things we'll learn Walter's responsible for down the line. The problem is the aging process can't be stopped, and that is why we saw this baby become an old man so quickly. Except there was apparently something the serial killer who was created by this scientist was going to take from the sex worker that would stop him from aging, because he actually has the super aging problem as well. Big notes from this episode in terms of character beats overall though. Peter begins contributing to the team as more than a babysitter pretty much immediately. In episode 1 it's implied he's just there to make sure that Walter doesn't get in trouble, but he is actively trying to help solve these crimes pretty much right away. It turns out though that the sex worker wasn't meant to get pregnant, and the killer actually did use a condom. It just broke.
Even condoms are not 100% effective. You too should be aware of this.
And at the end of the episode, the man killing the women ages to death due to him failing to get what he needs from his victims. We get this spooky shot of him like dying in a train rail yard. Ooh, bad. And there's also a bit of an oopsie from Walter, where he seems to admit a greater knowledge into a mysterious past for Peter's medical history than has previously been revealed. What you hiding, Walter? A lot, it turns out. So much. Pause. I want you to go ahead and rate this setup for a show with Olivia and Walter. Do you think it's interesting? Are you enticed? I then want you, once we're done with season 1, to come back and edit your comment and add a second rating on how well you think this premise is executed overall, because the twists are coming, and they are fire, in my opinion. Episode 3. Here we get the first Fringe event that is not directly Walter's fault. Still kinda though, you could argue in some ways. There is an amber attack on a bus, leaving all passengers trapped within in this kind of frozen state. And we actually learn later on in the show that when you're stuck in amber, you do feel time passing, though your mind is stuck on whatever the last thought you had was. So if these people were terrified when the gas that turned into amber started being released, oh, that's a fate worse than death. Why was this done though? Well, bad guys needed a bag that had been brought on this bus by a scientist, and this was their way of grabbing it, and I assume just making sure the scientist who would be a part of it would never rear their head in any way, shape, or form ever again. Simultaneously though, the Fringe division is looking into a man who reportedly has been seeing specifically Fringe events before they happen, and we see the plane incident from episode 1 that was basically the catalyst for the entire show was also seen by Roy before it occurred. Poor Roy thinks he's going insane, but realizes these things are actually happening. Do you just believe you're even more insane then? Like, how do you cope with that in your mind? God, that'd be horrible. As for a character beat, we also learn in this episode that Walter self-medicates with psychotics every single day.
You brought your own sweetener?
Don't be ridiculous. It's my medication.
You're not on any medication, Walter.
Of course I am. I've been making it myself in the lab.
Oh, I wish you were joking. You were self-medicating with homemade drugs.
Simple combination of dextromethorphan, clonazepam, and some fluoxetine.
Those are psychotics, Walter.
We also are shown just how much he has mentally degraded over the years when he asked Peter about a dog that has been dead for 20 years, thinking it would somehow still be alive.
How was Rufus?
Well, the house is just like we left, but we put Rufus to sleep almost 20 years ago, Walter.
Oh, that's terrible news.
And Peter's criminal past comes up again, but overall this is as relevant as Olivia's sister, meaning not at all. Of course, the compounds needed for the attack on the bus are linked back to Massive Dynamic, raising suspicions yet again.
I'll give you 6 guesses. and the first 5 don't count.
Guess who didn't do it? Roy is found by Fringe and suspected at first being responsible for the Amber attack, but no, he's just another victim. But utilizing Roy and his abilities to see into the future, at the end of the episode, we see Fringe Division discovers another traitorous agent working for the mysterious other. He helped grab the case from the bus and is about to deliver it to someone, but he is stopped last minute by Fringe team. Yay! And the accumulation of evidence against CFT and whoever else is really one of the big frustrations for Olivia in season 1, and I like that showcasing of her character, where she is really good at her job, but she is also not very patient with herself or an investigation. Now, episode 4. This is where Fringe decides to really start taking the training wheels off and imply just how dark Walter Bishop's past really is, because mysteries are abound and reveals are coming quick.
Head hurts a little, but Dr. Bishop gave me something for the pain.
Vicodin. That's it, I promise.
And that is because this is the Observer opening. Seriously though, let me know if you spot the Observer in this episode. Look, do you see him yet? He's really subtle. In this opening though, it is established a very important detail. Observers like spicy food. I'm not kidding, he dumps out an entire thing of pepper on his sandwich and asks for, I think, 19 jalapeno peppers.
Meat raw as possible. Room temperature water. No ice.
Gotcha.
Do you have jalapenos?
I think he does.
11 of those, please.
Just a very odd detail. Observers like to watch freaky things happening, and in this open we see a construction site seems to have some horrible mishap. We then jump to seeing Peter get upset about working this job, but Peter, we know you're not gonna leave, man. This is the best thing to have ever happened in your sad life, alright? So just have emotional moments with your dad and shut up!
What formula are you rattling off at 3 o'clock in the morning?
Formula for root beer.
Root beer. That's what's so important you couldn't stop yourself from broadcasting.
We have an artifact discovered. It is this small pillar that does not look like a butt plug. It does not. It does not look like a supernatural butt plug. This came from the underground, or the dirty path, and is what the Observer was watching. Shut up, shut up! This is going to tie into much later stuff, but there's still a lot of big deal things happening just within the narrative of this episode. Now, agents from the bad side come to intervene and take this mysterious interdimensional plug. And they have the most fun gun. Watch, look at this thing, look at this thing. It basically just goes like, and you go flying. I'm sure it's completely harmless too. Don't pay attention to the people that don't move after they get hit by it. Now, Olivia gets a call from John Scott. Yes, her dead boo. And this is a whole big bag of, are we about to deal with ghosts in a sci-fi show? No, we're not, don't worry. At the same time, Olivia pieces together that these observers have been around for quite some time. And this is also attributed to her eidetic memory of just knowing faces and being able to remember that that guy was there, oh, and he was also there, which is very cool Olivia character trait, and I do like that she has an eidetic memory, but I don't think I'd forget this guy's face either in general. He doesn't have eyebrows. All of this super important way later. But as the plug is being investigated, Walter seems to have some form of additional knowledge here that he's not speaking on. We then get Walter drugging Astrid, who's been acting as his lab assistant, which, whoa, dark things from his past looming over this, and taking the cylinder off to disappear.
Would you be a lamb and get me that syringe?
Sure.
Thank you.
He does this so that he can get lunch with an observer. We then learn that Walter has interacted with these creatures before. This specific one, named September, will become just so important later on. After this lunch, Walter is picked up by the FBI because they have basically everyone out looking for the mad scientist that disappeared after drugging an FBI agent. 'cause of course they would. And Peter is of course furious with Walter and the FBI for just not listening to him about how dangerous Walter could be. Now Walter tells Fringe Division of the Observer, which Peter doesn't even believe at first, but Olivia does due to her noticing these creatures up until this point. And I do want to say, this is an Observer, still the same one, just one. The bad guy who's been running around with the fun gun, you probably noticed, also bald. So that's 2 baldies to 1 Observer. Keep the score in mind. It's not important, I just want you to. And as Peter continues to ridicule Walter, Walter finally snaps back at Peter in a way that at first feels justified.
Tell us where the cylinder is.
Must you always be so small-minded? Damn it, don't be like her, like your mother. Questioning my judgment. I am not a child. I will not be babied.
A rather sore spot for Peter involving his dead mother, and seeing the father who abused you talk poorly about the mother you presumably loved. Ouch. Peter then threatens to walk. In fact, he even goes back to Fringe Division and begins packing, though bald guy number 2 is waiting for him. And Peter is taken and tortured. But now Fringe Division must find Peter before he gives away the location of where Walter hid the plug. Now, how would Peter know where the plug is when Walter's the one who took it and hid it apparently before his lunch with the Observer, and he specifically never told Peter? Well, it turns out that Peter knows Walter well enough that his mind might subconsciously know where Walter hid it, and that is why Baldy number 2 is torturing Peter with painful looking nose things, which, wow, that's horrifying, because he has tech advanced enough to then find out where Peter thinks Walter might hide something. It's one of the bigger reaches of Fringe. But aware of what might be being done here, Walter does finally tell Olivia where the plug was hidden, and so Olivia heads to a graveyard that Peter is simultaneously being taken to by Baldy. And this is where a showdown happens where the cylinder was taken, and Olivia gets in a forest shootout, and she even kills the bad bald guy. But the cylinder isn't then returned to Fringe Division custody for further research because it buries itself into the earth and disappears. Witnessing this strange event, you know him, you love him, is our Observer number 1. Peter notices this Observer observing the plug disappearing though, and just tackles the hell out of him. Peter, you're at a public graveyard. This could just be someone, like, I don't know, visiting a grave, or maybe you recognize this as the Observer Walter was talking to, but then why would you just tackle the shit out of him? Then this happens though.
You know what it is, don't you?
Why is it here?
Why now?
Who are you?
Apples, bananas, rhinoceros.
I want to hold your hand.
Lucy in the sky with diamonds.
Do you really know my father? Did you talk to him this afternoon?
At least I'm safe inside my mind.
At least I'm safe inside my mind.
The Observer then stuns Peter, and it's at this point I realize just how much Peter is beat up throughout Fringe. It's almost as much as Olivia, who gets it far, far worse than him. Now that the episode's coming to a conclusion though, we see Walter apologizes to Astrid for drugging her, and it's kind of wholesome while also being vile.
What I did to you was very untrustworthy of me. I never intended to harm you. I was simply doing what was necessary to protect us all. If it would help you feel a sense of retribution, I would tell you to inject me too. But I'd most likely enjoy it.
Dude, you drugged her. And after this encounter with the Observer, Peter is now fully a believer in the pattern and what Walter was saying before. Olivia says she never saw the Observer at the graveyard, but Peter is now just fully invested in Fringe Crew, and I don't think he ever threatens to leave again. The final big reveal of this episode though comes with Walter and Peter sitting down at the end, where Walter tells Peter of a time they got in a car crash and their car fell into a frozen lake. Peter says, yeah, I know, you pulled me from the water and saved my life. Walter says, no, the cold of the water was too much for me. It was an Observer that pulled us from the ice. And Walter, is still lying. The final beat though here is that Olivia sees once again her former lover, John Scott. By the way, we are not going to be getting into every episode with this level of detail. There's a lot of filler coming. These are just important episodes early on, and speaking of filler, episode 5. For the Fringe event here, we have a guy who sucks up power and involuntarily lets it out, killing people. Olivia has more visions of her dead boo, which Walter says are due to the LSD fun they had in the first episode, where he stuck her in a tank and dosed the shit out of her. Remember that? But they are memories of his mind coming through, nothing more. Not ghosties. Though I do love me some ghosties. The guy who is accidentally killing people with his soak-up powers isn't picked up by the Fringe crew though, and instead grabbed by the baddies ZFT. The Fringe crew ends up rescuing him, and the man is shipped off to be studied by Massive Dynamic. Kind of bleak there, but all of this comes into play later. Finally, on Walter's advice, Olivia follows visions from John Scott to one of his hideouts, leading to a trove of information. And yes, confirming John Scott knew about the pattern and was working for people who might be responsible for it. He was also apparently going to propose, but this is just so not important. I'm sorry, Olivia, especially because Charlie is right there. Why don't you just let him propose to you? In episode 6, the Fringe element is a distressed woman that can kind of just make people pop with her mind before she accidentally pops herself. Someone is experimenting on women. We also learn Walter's cotton candy preferences.
Could you bring me back some cotton candy?
Cotton candy.
Yeah. Blue, not pink.
And a guilty man in front of Olivia before naming the man responsible for this research, David. Someone who works for a company that's a direct competition for Massive Dynamic. This woman is traumatized time and time again, and there is so much more to come. She finds the aforementioned David, who you might recognize for being a teacher of Malcolm from Malcolm in the Middle.
How old are you? 28? 29? You're an attractive young woman. I'm sure you want to start a family one day. It would be a shame if anything got in your way.
Olivia, kill this man immediately, please, dear God. And to solve this case, Peter ends up making a deal with Nina Sharp to find out where exactly these experiments are being done on these women. Peter hides how he got this information from Olivia. Walter almost pokes a hole in the story of how Peter figured this out, but Peter gives him a sign to like keep it on the DL, and the two of them seem to be on the same page, which is like the first time that has happened, and I like it. It's one of those moments where you're like, oh, like father, like son.
We're sure this is the one. We've got a visible heat signature from the isotope.
Visible heat signatures. Radioactive isotopes don't give
Walter,
off.
Walter. How we doing?
Olivia, this is the antidote.
Turns out Massive Dynamic competitor is trying to turn people into human weapons. This is stopped, and Nina Sharp and Massive Dynamic get exactly what they want. Olivia Dunham arresting one of their competitors. Olivia, I said kill him, not arrest. Damn it. Now in episode 7, we meet a very important man, David Robert Jones. Played by the unbelievably talented and perfect face to play a villain, Jared Harris, who you might know from playing Moriarty in the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes show, or from starring in the just debatably perfect miniseries Chernobyl. The Fringe event here is that there is an FBI agent who has been dosed with some kind of super parasite, and his wife is so sad at his bedside. Note that I noted her. Olivia gets a lead that leads her to super criminal David Robert Jones, who is being held overseas in Germany, so she heads out to Germany, which does leave Peter, Astrid, and Walter essentially functioning on their own, though we do have Broyle swinging by, and him and Walter have this interaction, which I love.
You know, I had a fruit cocktail once in Atlantic City. Mind you, I'm not the fruit cocktail sort of guy.
Excuse me.
And through their investigation, there is evidence found of a possible mole within the FBI. It's almost like Fringe in season 1 really relied on bad guys hiding within good guys. They apprehend someone who was working for David Robert Jones, but he is dead, so once again, Walter gets to violate the mind of a dead guy, something he just apparently oh so loves doing.
Oh, Peter!
I do believe violating the brains of dead people is Walter's second favorite thing after LSD. And Olivia finally gets her sit down with David Robert Jones, who presents us the audience with a masterclass in villain acting. Walter then uses the violated corpse of David Robert Jones's guy to pass a code signaling to David Robert Jones that it's okay to give the cure, which he then does, saving the life of the agent, who it turns out, yes, is the mole, alongside with his wife, who I noted before. That does, yes, mean all of this was a conspiracy by David Robert Jones to pass on a code word, Little Hill, to his people, and Jared Harris is once again playing a Moriarty-type super genius villain. Episode 8 kicks off with a Fringe element of blinking lights that cause a hypnosis and then blackout, which as an adult now I'm like, okay, that's just like a whatever cool Fringe premise, but as a child, I remember scaring the hell out of me because specifically in this episode, a child is taken this way because within that child's mind is an equation that can apparently help finish a formula. The best part of this episode though is when it turns out there was another scientist who also had this equation stuck in their head. While the boy expresses this equation through music, the scientist did through formulas. This scientist is now locked away in the same insane asylum that Walter was, and so Walter goes back into his insane asylum to meet with this scientist. And if you didn't think you could be sympathetic towards Walter for being the monster he was, seeing him forced back into the institute that held him for so long and the regression that inflicts upon him will absolutely get you there, especially when he is forcibly kept there by an evil warden. Still, Walter manages to push through and attempts to get information from this scientist, some of which he does. Pain John Noble is able to put in this performance. It's so human that it just forces you to pull out empathy for Walter, and I think in many ways does prove he's not the man he once was. He is better now. Not perfect, but better. Oh, I forgot to mention, the woman who took the child at the beginning was Brenda from Community, the same actress. Well, I like to think the same character too. This is what Brenda got up to after Sunnydale. And in one super up scene that I also remember scaring me when I was a kid, Brenda is torturing this child to try and force him to get the equation out of his mind into his music by showing him visions of his dead mother dying again and begging her child to finish it so she can live with him. Talk about scarring. Yes, in Fringe, children are not off the table, foreshadowing. Now, I ragged on Joshua Jackson before just being a fine actor among great ones, and I feel the need to kind of give an example now, because him and Olivia are having conflict with the warden who is forcing Walter to once again be held in the insane asylum. And he gives this monologue that's supposed to be threatening.
Excuse me?
Whether you're willing to recognize it or not, Walter is a danger, both to himself and to others.
Then I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Because you may think you know what he's capable of, but you have no idea what I'm capable of.
I don't feel threatened. I feel like a 15-year-old with a beard tried to intimidate me. Anyway, Olivia is able to track down where the child is being held, and while she is chasing Brenda away from the compound they're in after she successfully got the equation from the boy, Olivia is then hypnotized by a light blinking trap. I will say, at the very end of the episode, Joshua Jackson does win me back a bit though.
You know, what you did by going back into that place was very, very brave, Walter.
Thank you, son.
Baby steps towards father-son bonding, and it works so well. The end of the episode though, we see Brenda deliver the equation she successfully got to the kid to the evil agent who is working for David Robert Jones. And we see this equation allows them to build a device that lets them move through solid matter. And then the evil agent kills Britta, who I think I've been calling Brenda on accident this whole time. Brenda from Community. This is what Brenda is torturing this, and while she is chasing Brenda away, Brenda deliver the equation she successfully got to the kids.
Not
Brenda.
Now in episode 9, the Fringe event is apparently razor butterflies that cut you to death and then hide after they kill you. But as they investigate, it turns out the cuts came from the inside. The cuts are coming from inside the body because it's all in your mind. Also, it's a massive dynamic employee who has died this way. The main important character moments in this episode are that it is implied that Olivia's personal life is being crushed by working for Fringe Division.
Anyway, I'm glad you're coming. It's been ages since we've had a chance to talk.
Yeah, can you hold on one sec? I've got another call. Hello?
I need you to pick up the others and get to Marlboro Airport.
Though this narrative beat for her character isn't super well explored as things continue to escalate, and I think that's because it would kind of feel ridiculous as we get to the world-ending stakes of later seasons to have Olivia be like, oh, but I wasn't able to go out with my friends. It turns out the guy who saw the butterflies had like an obsession with butterflies and was dosed with a drug that makes something his mind is fixated on kill him. And this is related to some more research from Walter, where he was able to convince people of things like, you know, cuts or burns just from their brain believing they would happen.
A form of hypnosis. I convinced him that he was in a meat locker. And what is more impressive, I told him that this ice cube was a burning coal.
Yet we don't really get any beats from Walter here showing remorse or horror at what he was doing, and that's kind of all glossed over, even though I think it's really repugnant. I just like where this thematic focus could have gone. Olivia gets back in the tank to try and comb through more memories from the traitorous John Scott, and she goes back to a memory within John Scott's mind of them having dinner together. We move into some other of Scott's memories where we see the faces of some of his accomplices, one of them being the man who died from the butterflies. Fringe Division is able to track down the other accomplice visible in the vision, even if you're running from the FBI, if you're in a busy city, look both ways before you cross the street. Now, this guy is willing to talk, but of course he is killed first. Almost anyone who's willing to talk to Fringe Division ends up dying before they're actually able to do so. And the way the episode frames his death, though, super implies that Massive Dynamic is responsible for it. He dies in his hospital bed from a vision of John Scott. He has been dosed by the same drug as the butterfly guy, and apparently what he feared most or what he was thinking about is John Scott, because if he's turning over to the FBI all this evidence, I think people from his past punishing him for doing so would be his biggest fear. But this is happening while Nina Sharp monologues about how Massive Dynamic is innocent, and we then see a nurse watch as this guy's throat slits itself from the drug.
I wasn't anything.
Holy crap. And at the end of the episode, it has established some real growth from Walter, at least compared to his past self, because Olivia asks about going under yet again to comb through more of these memories, and Walter says no.
I need to go back in.
In our room?
No. In the tank.
There is little makes me happier than taking drugs. Perhaps administering them, designing and carrying out experiments that bend the plane of what we consider reality. I'm rarely, if ever, opposed to such things, except now. But I tell you, you will damage yourself. Every time you go back in, the risk of permanent damage, seizures, aneurysms. Give me some time. I will try to develop a safer technique. But not tonight. You need to rest.
This is one of the few early season signs, in my opinion, of Walter's true goodness. He does bad things in these early seasons and makes mistakes because he's a mixture of selfish or just not fully mentally competent. Here, though, we definitely see when current Walter is at his most lucid, he has regrets, and he does not want to push further into that unethical territory unless he has to. And at this point, you might be thinking, what the hell is going on? How is Massive Dynamic not the evil people? And I will say, in the way that all massive corporations who work on science in weaponry are evil, Massive Dynamic certainly is. But this conspiracy is about to get so so much bigger, so buckle up, buckaroos. In episode 10, we see the bad agent working for David Robert Jones uses the tech we saw him get from Britta to get into a vault with a team to rob some safety deposit boxes. They don't get out in time though, and one person is left frozen halfway in the wall. Just a horrible way to die, and I have no idea what happens to this man's internal organ.
Let's go.
No. Help me. Please.
Again, there are limitations put on this Fringe technology, like, oh, they weren't able to keep it open as long as they want. A continual theme throughout all of Fringe, where yes, people are able to do incredible things, there is always a cost, and that, we're about to re-emphasize that in some big ways. We cut to seeing David Robert Jones getting visits from his lawyer. Yes, the setup for the bad guy coming is happening. And David Robert Jones asks his lawyer his suit size. Excuse me, Mr. Lawyer, is it not day one of being a lawyer that they tell you if you're visiting a client, a dangerous client, and they ask you what your suit size is, run like hell? That, like, dude, I have an easier time believing the most crazy fringe element of Fringe than this lawyer not seeing this as a gargantuan red flag and never seeing David Robert Jones again, period. This is like being in a prison yard and having someone hand you a shank and just being like, hold this for 1 second. Give that back, please. As Peter and Walter are gathering some tools to do some research into this body that was frozen into a wall, we get this fantastic moment from Walter and a store employee.
Can I help you guys find something?
Oh, yes. We're looking for an electric saw, preferably variable speed with an easily replaceable blade system.
What are you cutting, wood?
Human tissue, flesh and bone. It's more sinuous than you may expect.
It's really not that dire.
Oh, actually, potentially it's far worse.
I think that the saw you're looking for is around the corner, next to the routers.
Thank you.
No need to call the police.
And later that night, after Peter and Olivia do card tricks at each other flirtatiously, Peter realizes the numbers from the safety deposit box are numbers Walter repeats in his sleep. It turns out they're the Fibonacci sequence. They go to wake Walter, and he says this to them as they barge into his bedroom.
Oh, do you two want to use the room?
Walter, this is important. The number.
Peter, I'm starting to feel more and more bad for you and the horrible scarring that happens. And yes, Walter owned these safety deposit boxes, but he forgot, and he has no idea what the pieces within will do once assembled. Through badassery, they're able to figure out where exactly the next heist will be and apprehend one of the suspects. Here we see though what the ZFT agents were building, because David Robert Jones kills his lawyer and takes his suit. Who could have seen that coming? Certainly not the lawyer, and is teleported by their newly built device from his prison. Simultaneously, Olivia is kidnapped by David Robert Jones's team, and we see her begin to be experimented on in the next episode.
Try not to move.
And I really love the details of David Robert Jones putting cream on his face and saying he needs to be put into a like hyperbaric chamber or something after his teleportation. Again, this was able to get him out of prison, but he is about to pay a very big physical cost of being teleported. But cutting right into episode 11, they rescue Olivia. Oh no, wait, she rescues herself because she's goddamn Anna Torv. Anna Torv.
Da 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 dum. Da 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 dum.
There's not really a Fringe event episode I want to pay too much attention to, just a super gigantic cold and Walter dosing a caterpillar with LSD.
Well, it's a special blend.
I see. Hey, guess what just happened? Finding out that my father's giving drugs to bugs somehow just became a typical moment in my life.
It's wonderful, isn't it?
5 minutes later.
Is that LSD?
LSD? Why would I? It's a decongestant.
But when Olivia wakes up in the hospital after freeing herself and noticing the shoes of her captors, that'll come into play later, we see a superior officer is by her bedside, and it's one whose career she ended by reporting him for being a dirtbag towards female soldiers.
You probably didn't think you'd see me again so soon.
Don't take this the wrong way, Mr. Harris, but I don't think about you all too often.
Really? Well, you must get some satisfaction from what you did to me. My conviction wasn't a point of pride for you?
Why am I cuffed to the bed?
Because this is the kind of authority that I have here.
He was referenced in episode 1, and he's just the grossest and worst. He threatens her, and it turns out is going to be overseeing the entirety of Fringe Division over Broyles. Gross. Broyles does go against this guy, thank God, mildly making up for him being apparently on this guy's side in the pilot, though, as I said before, they just do a full 180 with Broyles' character here. But later on, Olivia recognizes the shoes of her abductor being the mole FBI agent who's been working for David Robert Jones this whole time. Finally, the traitor has been revealed, and Charlie enlists the help of Peter to plant a bug, which he does.
Suffice it to say that sometimes the problem with being in law enforcement is that you gotta obey the law yourself.
Olivia goes to snoop on the agent's home and runs into his oh-so-sad wife from before and ends up shooting her directly in the head. Olivia's a great shot. They then track down the traitorous agent, who Olivia also punches in the head. Olivia goes for the head, consistent character trait here. Olivia successfully gets a confession of this guy by basically rubbing his wife's death in his face, and then the traitor speaks vaguely of two mysterious sides at war, and claims not to have kidnapped Olivia, but have saved her. Here we cut to episode 12, which is basically total filler. The Fringe element is a computer virus that melts your brain if you download it and watch it. It's like a Walmart version of The Ring. And Olivia also clashes with the gross guy more, and Walter has an emotional moment with the mother of the assistant he was responsible of the death of. It seems like she might be coming to scream at Walter or hurt him, but instead we see she just wants to ask Walter about her daughter's final days. It's actually a really beautiful moment, and one of the times where the deep, deep remorse within Walter is emphasized.
I'm scared.
Me too. I miss her.
Episode 13, though, starts on a plane, and so you know a whole lot of people are about to die. It turns out there is a drug that turns a man into a spiky version of Bigfoot. Remember this one? It's filler for now, but it becomes very important later on, so it's fake filler, it's faux filler. And Olivia at the end goes back into the tank, dosed on LSD one more time, and is able to get rid of the last vestiges of John Scott within her mind. It's a metaphor for her grief. And we're never gonna think about John Scott again. In episode 14, we are back to bigger plot stuff because David Robert Jones is out of his chamber and attempting to heal from teleportation. We notice, though, he's not fully succeeding, and this guy physically deteriorates throughout the rest of the season. Big time. Turns out teleporting super unhealthy, like 3 Big Macs with fries a day type of unhealthy. The Fringe event of this episode is actually a weapon from David Robert Jones, and it's a spray that apparently just seals up all of the holes on your body, like eyes, mouth, nose, ears. It is absurdly horrifying and definitely scarred me as a child. Now, I know you noticed I said all holes there, and don't worry, Walter Bishop had the same question as you.
Did they check his anus and penis?
You think we could get the answer to that question without me in the room?
Leads require Peter to call on a bookstore owner he knows, and I really like this character. For now, he's just a fun, nerdy guy who has access to a lot of rare texts. Except, they do this character so dirty in later seasons, and I hate it. We'll get to that. There's a whole bunch of Charlie in this episode, so it's immediately one of the best episodes of the season, and Charlie is helping look for David Robert Jones. But don't worry, Charlie, you won't have to look very far because he's currently in the lobby. Wait, what are you doing here, David Robert Jones, you little stinker? You're supposed to be hiding, goofball! Of course, David Robert Jones has plans afoot. They interrogate him, and gross sexist guy is gross and talks down to Olivia. David Robert Jones will only speak to Olivia, though, so he gets what he wants. He has a test for Olivia to pass, or a bomb will go off, doing a whole lot more of the face melt. Walter starts reading from a manifesto David Robert Jones brought, and we learn about the existence of a multiverse, or more specifically about how our universe is apparently, according to at least David Robert Jones, converging with another only slightly different than our own universe. And according to David Robert Jones, only one universe can survive. Now, Olivia does pass a weird test from David Robert Jones to prove she has magic powers, and whoa. Olivia has magic powers? How did she get these? Well, someone on our team is suddenly starting to look a little sus. And here is where season 1 of Fringe starts to feel like a grenade held in the hand with the pin pulled. There's going to be a big reveal, and characters are starting to connect the dots. But when this will go off, hangs in the air. Walter, though, seems very eager to blame this on his lab partner, William Bell, who he claims ran trials where they experimented on children with a drug called cortexiphan. And Olivia may have been dosed with this when she was a child. Now, what exactly is cortexiphan? Think of it like a chemical that would turn you into an X-Men, because that's what it is. It allows the true potential of the brain of children to be accessed in adulthood, something along those lines, whatever it means. Olivia's ability unlocked through these means seemed to be vaguely somewhat related to being tapped into the multiverse. I wonder what scientist knows enough to have a history of working in the multiverse. Now, it turns out David Robert Jones has access to Walter/William Bell's work, and he's been combining it with his crazy religious prophecy, except this prophecy, it turns out, isn't too far off from the truth. But for now, it turns out that Massive Dynamic holds the patent for cortexiphan. And while it seems like the cortexiphan trials were originally unsuccessful, maybe they just needed to wait for those children to turn into adults. With David Robert Jones in their custody, though, he's actually brought into the room with Walter, where he seems almost just reverent towards Walter and his work. Now, the bomb is defused, and it turns out that was the real test, because the only way she could defuse the bomb goes beyond the smaller test David Robert Jones put forward before, and instead she must use these powers within her to successfully deactivate the bomb itself. It's clear somehow Walter is involved in all of this, but how exactly, the crew is not fully aware of yet. This brings us, though, to episode 15. The Fringe element introduced here is a wild boy is found to be hiding in a building that had no access to the outside world for 70 years. Yes, he was somehow living, eating, drinking for 70 years in this building and not aging? He's also just super pale. And bald. Wait, does that mean I need to add to the... Now, at the same time, an old case of Olivia's rears its head, involving a serial killer she was never able to catch. It turns out, though, the boy has sight beyond reality, and though he's unable to speak, Walter is able to use his knowledge and abilities to allow them to communicate with the boy to then find where this serial killer is going to strike next, because the boy can use his sight beyond reality to solve the crime.
Nicely done, Walter.
Oh god, how do you not love Walter? Well, this is also Walter Bishop using manipulation to have a child relax so he can then experiment on it. And that is some of the brilliance of the writing of Fringe, especially with what we learn later on. Moments like these can hit in very different ways. This is objectively, while watching it, really cute, and I think when Kayla saw it, she went like, oh, Walter's so good with the kids. I know what's to come later in this season, and reframing this scene, it's super not okay. And I'm immediately asking myself, are we watching Walter do what needs to be done to successfully solve a horrible crime? Or is this wildly unethical and he's manipulating a child, presumably, into an experiment that they don't fully understand or know the outcome of? But after they successfully catch the killer, the child is taken off to a presumably safe home, and we see an observer watching him. Okay, so was the kid a baldy or an observer? Well, for that, you'll have to stick around and see. I said I'd always tell you, but I lied, and I'm sorry. Now, episode 16 might be the most filler episode of all the filler episodes, though it has quite a bit of Charlie, so that's fun, and he's shirtless. That's funner. The Fringe event involves some animal testing that creates a super monster that's loose in Boston. There's a bad CGI beastie that stabs Charlie and impregnates him with a bunch of little babies, meaning we get a whole bunch of Charlie-Walter interactions, which are the highlight of the episode, and the emotional devastation I felt learning that Charlie was married. I'm not gonna heal from that one. And the episode as a whole ends with Walter trying to do like a self-sacrifice to take down the monster, but of course, they're not going to kill Walter in Fringe, so we just end up getting Walter with a Desert Eagle shooting something to death, which is cool.
You okay? Yes. Although, when I mentioned that the poison would kill me within the hour, did either of you happen to notice the time?
Now, episode 17 are where the real depths of the depravity of Walter's past come into the spotlight. Now, the Fringe element introduced is specifically in terms of like mental health representation, really dark. It turns out there is a man who was turning people's thoughts against them, causing them to either commit or kill someone else. Essentially, their intrusive thoughts are turned up to a max because his own emotions are projected into others. Olivia is also simultaneously dreaming herself at these crimes. Pretty neat setup. Even on the third rewatch I had to do of this episode before sitting down to record here today, I was just hooked from beginning to end. I think I'm gonna go ahead and call it early and name this the best Fringe element of season 1 because it's just on face value enticing and also ties into Cortexiphan, which, let's just say that then is the best Fringe element of season 1. In this episode though, the Fringe team fully learns of Walter's involvement in the Cortexiphan trials. And it turns out this man was also one of the children Walter experimented on. This also heavily implies that Olivia was also one of Walter's test subjects because this man was from Jacksonville, Florida, just like Olivia. We also learned this accidental serial killer had been previously committed because he believed he was a part of some trials to create super child soldiers to fight in an upcoming war? Why is this all? Oh my God, Walter, what did you do? The boy now man suffers from thoughts and he's accidentally projecting his thoughts into other people and just plainly stating what's been heavily hinted at through Fringe so far. Yes, both William Bell and Walter Bishop were experimenting on children to try and create super soldiers to fight in an upcoming war, and Olivia was one of them. So everything we've seen of Walter so far, can he be redeemed? Can he possibly be a good man now? That's the idea that Fringe is going to play with for quite some time. And in my opinion, never really definitively answer, just show the consequences of. And that is the beauty of the writing around Walter. But Peter begins to question why Olivia is seeing the murders happen, and Walter mentions using the facade of a summer camp to be able to experiment on children with their guards down. And here he finally implies directly that Olivia was one of his subjects.
This pairing kept them from becoming frightened or feeling isolated. Sometimes an intense bond could form. A bond which could be greatly amplified by a drug like Cortexiphan.
Yeah, Walter using a summer camp to get children to have their guards down really recontextualizes the adorable dancing from before. And I just can't help but wonder like what's going through Olivia's mind at this moment because she's smart enough to have put the pieces together at this point. But a defining character trait of hers is she doesn't let these revelations that through very minute details in the performance you're clearly seeing Olivia understands at this point distract her from the active investigation she needs to focus on. We get Olivia confronting Walter. She just puts it off for now because Olivia is incredible at her job. Through the use of Walter's typical extreme sci-fi methods, they're able to increase the bond Olivia shares with the accidental serial killer and find him, standing on a rooftop so depressed he has brought a small army of people to with him from the building. Holy God, dude. As someone who is currently in therapy to try and help deal with childhood trauma, this isn't exactly what I would call a nuanced or delicate take on what traumatic events from a childhood can do to someone in their adult life. But for early 2000s television and the themes that are orbiting around these characters right now, it's definitely an emotionally impactful one. Now, because Olivia was also dosed with Cortexiphan along with this guy, she is actually immune to his ability, so she is able to go directly up on this roof and have a confrontation with, we learn his name, Nick.
Olive, you hurt me.
You heard me, you came. You were always the strong one.
I did what they told us. I waited, Olive. The soldier to come is both natural and unnatural. I waited to be called up. Stay fit, stay focused, stay ready. I wore the blacks and grays. I blended in. The call never came.
Nick, you don't have to do this.
I want to stop hurting people.
He asks Olivia to, and when she hesitates, he makes one of the people that came with him, and he'll make everyone if she doesn't kill him. And what should be the most tense moment with no levity whatsoever is somehow made hilarious by John Noble's incredible performance. Because when the woman this man makes slams into a car, he says this.
I do hope Agent Dunham meant to do that.
That should not be funny. But it's so funny. God damn it. And it's also another character beat from Walter, because he's so jaded or disconnected from reality, which of the two I'm not sure, that a woman smashing to her death next to him appears not to really faze him. Now, to save the day, Olivia just shoots Nick in the knees and everybody on the building falls back onto the building, not off. One hell of a risky move from Olivia that did pay off. But in an episode full of tension and profound, emotionally nuanced moments, we end on this note with Walter sitting in a dark room playing an old VHS tape.
Casualties?
Not sure yet. We can't locate Brenner.
It's okay. It's all right now. Nobody's angry with you. You didn't do anything bad. It's all right, Olive. Everything's going to be okay.
If you did not understand what you just saw, that was Walter Bishop and William Bell experimenting on a young girl named Olivia Dunham, who it seems through our experimentation has just accidentally killed a man. Walter, you son of a bitch. This scene confirms he remembers, he knew, and he just hasn't spoken up because he's terrified, which in some ways you understand, and it's part of the emotional tug and pull of Walter, because there's also the detail of the pain on his face, and it's... Oh, Walter! In episode 18, the Fringe event we get here is a sci-fi succubus/vampire. It turns out a scientist man who worked for ZFT accidentally turned his wife into this creature, and he dies trying to help the Fringe team stop her. Though he's so grateful for their assist in stopping his wife, he then reveals everything he knows about ZFT and heavily implicates William Bell, the CEO of Massive Dynamic, being responsible for a lot of it. And that means in episode 19, we finally have enough evidence to launch Fringe Division against William Bell. But the Fringe event in this episode is a woman who seems to just erupt in flames out in the street.
There's something strange in your neighborhood.
Who you gotta call?
Walter does come forward with something he has been sitting on, though. No, not all of the details confessing that we saw revealed in the last episode, which he should do at this point, if not long before, but instead, the manuscript they received from David Robert Jones' episode prior was actually written on William Bell's typewriter. Walter's old lab partner is looking mighty guilty, and it sure would explain how ZFT was able to get their hands on so much of Walter's research if his former lab partner was responsible for them. We then get this strange Olivia scene.
All right, I'll get the coroner to prep the bodies for transport.
Bodies? Is there another somewhere?
You okay?
Gee willikers, I wonder what happened there. Gross Guy rears his ugly head again, and I just want to clarify, yes, Gross Guy is bald. Not an observer, he's a baldy. But he's interfering with their active investigation into William and Bell and is trying to protect the CEO of Massive Dynamic. Olivia asks at this point if they're really going to stop investigating William Bell, to which Broyles responds,
Are we really going to?
No. Get more evidence.
Oh, why was that so great to hear? But it turns out the woman from the Fringe event in the opening was born with something, or experimented on, and had to release energy.
Did I do that?
Because of that whole two victims things we just saw occur within Broyles' office, we know there is another woman about to blow in our universe. While they're doing all of this, Olivia then has this vision. Yeah, Olivia's powers are coming into play. And Walter does have a scene where he confirms the multiverse hypothesis, and Olivia is Cortexiphan, allowing her to see through thin membranes between the two universes merging, which does mean a whole lot of what we've heard from David Robert Jones is true. And I really like when a villain is revealed to be largely right, they're just going about a problem possibly in the wrong way. Because while David Robert Jones is certainly involved in this war, I wouldn't exactly say he's trying to fight for our side. Don't pay attention to the possible looming apocalypse due to merging universes though, because we have a flaming woman to focus on. Olivia and Peter do some more investigating, we get this amazing doorbell shot, and finally the other woman is found. Gross Guy shows up though, and big surprise, it turns out the bad guy is a bad guy who works for David Robert Jones. He locks Olivia in a room with this woman who might explode, but Olivia now has some experience in handling some of these experimental superpowers, and she coaches the woman into projecting the energy into Gross Guy. Yay! He bursts into flame and dies! Oh, this makes up for not killing Malcolm's teacher from before. We're even now, we're good. Let's do some more blowing up bad guys later though. This episode ends with the best character moment from season 1 of Fringe. Hands down, in my opinion. Finally, Olivia has the time to confront Walter.
You and William Bell, Walter. What did you do to me? Susan Pratt and Nancy Lewis are from Jacksonville, Florida. Just like Nick Lane, the guy that you conducted drug trials on when he was a kid. The drug trials that you conducted on me.
They were Billy's. They were his trials.
But you knew. Walter, you were there. And you knew.
We were trying to help. We meant no harm.
No harm. You were drugging children. 3-year-old children, Walter. Why did you do it?
We were trying to prepare you. To make you capable. Able. Something terrible is coming.
What?
I don't know.
Walter, what did you do to us? Damn it, Walter, you do.
No, I don't. I don't. I can't remember.
It's so goddamn painful. Because yes, Olivia is 100% right to confront Walter right now and to throw his crimes in his face. What Walter did was inexcusable and horrible and gross. But is this even the same man? We're gonna learn some things about how he's changed, and debatably not, but Olivia still has the right to confront him. And this beautiful, brutal moment is followed up by Peter coming and just fully comforting Walter, not knowing exactly what just happened, but seeing his father in severe emotional distress after Olivia leaves. And we see Peter hold his father's hand. My God, I love the character growth we are seeing just in season 1. So well earned. So painful to watch. The episode ends with Nina showing up at Broyles' house and showing him more pictures of an observer. Then Walter finds a missing part of the manifesto among his things. An observer comes though and takes Walter as he reads the ethical bounds written on that typewriter for the manifesto that was missing. Something is indeed coming, my goblins, and this man is our best weapon. Oh, and I forgot, the very end of this episode, Nina Sharp is shot in the chest. So episode 20 kicks off with Nina Sharp in critical condition, and through some BS voice identification, Fringe is able to see that David Robert Jones was involved with her shooting. Quick, let's get Walt. Well, he was taken by an observer, so Walter has been taken to a cemetery, but we'll get to that after we watch David Robert Jones open a portal in reality that has a truck come through it before closing because it was too unstable. Oh, we already just watched all that, so I don't really need to go over it again. Okay, before we get to Walter in the cemetery, we need to talk about the fact that Olivia, investigating this truck, finds out it was never made, at least in our world. After being discharged from the hospital, we find out that the arc reactor type thing from Nina Sharp's robotic arm has been taken. And it's assumed that David Robert Jones took this power source for whatever technology he's now using to open these portals. Nina Sharp, though, tries to clear William Bell's name and blames everything on David Robert Jones, confirming that David Robert Jones used to work for him and is obsessed with the research William Bell and Walter Bishop were doing. William Bell fired him, though, thinking that David Robert Jones was too radical. Speaking of radical, the effects of what are happening to David Robert Jones due to the teleportation mean that he's running around with just bandages all over him. The guy looks rough. And a last desperate measure to keep Olivia pointed at David Robert Jones and not William Bell, though, Nina Sharp offers Olivia a meeting with William Bell if she is able to stop David Robert Jones from permanently opening one of these portals. By the way, all of that was just the intro to the episode before we get the iconic Fringe intro. Okay. Now we got that out of the way, though, let's go back to Walter at the grave. Oh, he's on a beach now. Well, the Observer took him to a beach. That's nice. You see, they're by a house that Walter used to own, and the Observer tells Walter he must find something in the house and then leave, after giving Walter a coin, telling him that it's not the coin he thinks it is. FBI finds out where Walter is due to security footage. Peter, seeing where the security footage is taken by the lake house, goes to go get him, knowing Walter will be at their former house. Upon finding him, Walter is revealed to not remember what the Observer wants him to find.
Walter?
I have finished it.
Walter.
Hi!
Walter. I need you to take a breath and calm down. Walter, I need you to take a deep breath.
I don't know where to look. I don't know where to look outside. It's important to look out.
Oh my god, how do you not feel for this man? Maybe it's because, like, losing my own cognitive abilities is one of my worst fears in the real world, but seeing Walter struggle so desperately to try and do what he knows is right and needs to be done to stop a madman from using his research to do something awful just makes me feel so much for this monster. I still have empathy for him, and I think that's the real challenge of his character, and I love it. And Peter then again shows his growth and love for his father, talking about waking up on Saturday mornings, smelling pancakes, and knowing that meant Walter was there. This then jogs Walter's memory, and through some cognitive connections, he remembers what is hidden in this house. He tells Peter of him and William Bell doing, shocking I know, massive amounts of LSD.
You don't say.
And seeing other universes, then using their science to look into these other universes. Walter eventually took that research far enough to go to one of those worlds, but to close the portal after he did, he built a device, and that is what's hidden at this house. What David Robert Jones has been doing is trying to find the softest spot between these two colliding universes so that he can then open a portal and walk through. The softest spot, it turns out, is at Raiden Lake, where Peter and Walter used to live and where Walter actually opened that portal into that other universe. While it may have been closed, it wasn't healed. David Robert Jones has one more failed experiment at the wrong location before figuring out that it must be Raiden Lake. This failed experiment involves a child being sliced by his portal. Oh my god. But this does allow Fringe Division to use some sci-fi gobbledy pattern recognition gook to then know where David Robert Jones is going to have his final successful experiment, Raiden Lake, as well. So Peter, Walter, David Robert Jones, Olivia, and Fringe Division are all converging on Raiden Lake, a lake that is going to be brought up many a times. I do like that this weak spot in reality, though, is implied to also be why so much strange science stuff has been happening in the greater Boston area. It's literally a place where the laws of physics, the bound reality of our universe, is weaker. So things that should only have been difficultly kind of possible become within the grasp of more mediocre scientists who aren't as advanced as Walter. It's not the most concrete, hard justification, but it's one. But when all of our characters arrive at Raiden Lake, there is a shootout between David Robert Jones's crew and the FBI. David Robert Jones does successfully open the doorway, but Peter has the blocker given to him from Walter. Will he be able to stop David Robert Jones crossing? Well, we see David Robert Jones is already walking towards the portal. Olivia shoots a couple of David Robert Jones's guys because she has no time for bull. But David Robert Jones doesn't stop and continues stepping.
If you take one more step, I'll shoot!
Goodbye, Agent Dunham.
Jones?
Teleporter. It may be killing me, but in the meantime, it's made me something rather special. You see, your bullets just go right through me. And soon Dr. Bell will see just how special I am.
I wanted him to blow up, but I'll take a bisecting any day. That's almost as good as a decapitation. Holy mother of God. And here's where we get a kind of harsh cut to the post-climax scene. I don't often have heavy criticisms of Fringe's editing, but we go from like this intense universe-bending climax to suddenly just like, all right, we're back in the lab.
Walter, put the cow away, would you?
And here we see Peter discovers a note from Walter saying he is stepping out. And while previously, anytime Walter was not directly under supervision, Peter would freak out, here we say it's the first time Walter's left a note, so let's let him go. I don't fully agree with this, but seeing the growing bond between the two, I can understand why Peter would let him go. We finally cut to seeing Walter back at that graveyard the Observer took him to, placing one of the coins he found, because when he was in the house with Peter earlier, I forgot to mention it, he found another exact copy of that coin, and he takes the actual one from our world and places it on the gravestone of Peter Bishop. Yes, that is why Walter crossed universes. His son died, and he found another to replace him. Remember the files mentioned about Peter's medical history? More is yet to be revealed. As for the extent of Walter's crimes, even now, we have only scratched the surface. But finally, we see Olivia is allowed her meeting with William Bell. She goes to New York, where she sits down at a lunch that unfortunately William Bell does not show up for. Apparently he is still out of the country, or universe. She leaves the lunch, gets in an elevator, and then seems as blipped. Yes, Olivia is transported somewhere. She leaves the elevator, is led down a hall, and enters an office, where stepping from the shadows, we see William Bell, played by Leonard Nimoy. Holy crap! The camera then pulls back from this shot, and it's revealed that Olivia is standing within the Twin Towers, because in the other universe, the September attacks didn't happen. Neither did the Hindenburg incident, so they still use airships in this universe as well, but that's a detail added later, and one that I love. If that's not enough to get you hooked though, I don't know what is. Holy hell do I love this first season. In summation, we have Walter Bishop being a multiverse violator to steal a copy of his son after his died. He is also someone who, once made aware of the multiverse and shattering the fabric between the realities, began working on child soldiers to fight in an inevitable war he made happen. Oh my God. And Olivia Dunham, the character who freed him, was one of his victims, and his son Peter does not know or remember any of this. I already said, as for my favorite Fringe element this season, it's gonna go to just like Cortexiphem as a whole and its specific utilization in that one episode, Olivia and Nick. If I had to choose one outside of Cortexiphem, because that's kind of like a series-long Fringe element, and choose one that's specific to this season, I really actually like the hallucination butterfly one that like takes whatever your mind's fixating on and turns it into something in the real world that can hurt you because your mind believes it can. Seeing that guy's throat slit itself is incredible, and it's based off of real-world science, kinda, with the placebo effect, which is a real-world thing where your mind can convince itself of stuff and cause physical changes in your body. The best Fringe elements are all tied to reality, though honorable mention to the whole closing one because of this line from Walter.
Did they check his anus and penis?
Lamest, the worst one, is going to be the animal testing monster thing. That's just like a scorpion lizard that Walter shoots with a desert eagle. It's a fine episode, I guess, but it's tied into nothing and pays off in no real way. And the CG for it genuinely looks terrible. And it's not because I'm jealous that creature got to impregnate Charlie. I just wanted to say that to be the weirdest thing I say this whole video. Now though, let's move on to season 2. So for episode 1 though, we are going to pick up right where we left off, in the middle of a car crash, of course. Wait, what? Excuse me? Then we see a strange man murder someone, break their own face, and then steal the face of the man they killed. You know, as you do after a car crash. That's right, Season 2 is introducing the shapeshifters from the other side, and these monsters are here to steal faces and induce paranoia. And yes, this is the introduction of Princess Megan as an FBI agent who kind of acts as an Olivia stand-in while Olivia is in a coma because Olivia was in that car crash. But I'm not going to mention her too much even though she's in these first couple episodes because she's just not very relevant overall. She's just here. It'd be weird if I didn't mention her. One of the most famous people in the world. But with Olivia being in a car crash, of course, Peter and Walter get a call. Before they get this call, we see they are in a grocery store, and we get even more hints that have actually been frequently in season 1 as well. I just didn't want to spoil it by getting into them then. That Peter is not Walter's actual biological child, and instead is the one that he took when he was very young.
I'm making you a cake and making you a custard. It's my specialty.
I don't like custard. In fact, I've never liked custard.
Friday is your birthday. You deserve something wonderful.
I like that this show never backs down from reminding us that this is not Walter's actual son. He kidnapped him. But after getting the call, Peter and Walter arrive at a car crash. And the Fringe event here is that apparently no one was driving the car. Not that someone got out. The seatbelt is still buckled. It just seems whoever was driving is gone. And it's been about an hour since the crash. Well, about at the 1 hour mark, Olivia then suddenly shoots through the windshield.
Uh-oh, Simpson did it! Simpson did it! No!
What the hell is happening? Well, don't worry, it's season 2, and Walter's got your back. Now, the show as a whole does a whole fake out in this first episode that Olivia's in a brain-dead coma, and oh my god, she might die, but of course she's not going to. This is more just here to establish how much Walter specifically does actually care about Olivia in his own way.
I'm so sorry.
But she's able to recover from shooting from this windshield and hitting pavement, largely due to cortexiphan being in her system, believe it or not. But we'll get more into that, I think, in season 3. Olivia wakes up from this coma speaking gibberish for a moment, but mostly seems okay aside from a dislocated hip and a whole lot more of just mental scarring and not remembering exactly what happened while she was over on the other side. But with Olivia indisposed in the hospital, Megan steps in to help be the FBI agent to get Peter and Walter into crime scenes so they can do their investigating.
Why are you doing this?
Following the case.
It doesn't pay to bluff a bluffer, Agent Jessup. You know, a lot of people would be scared by this. Most, actually.
I think I've been waiting for you people my whole life.
And it's because lines like that, I really think they were trying to set this up as a major player later on, but then just back down when they realized the chemistry just wasn't entirely there.
Peter! They said I can ride in the back with the body. Can I?
Sure. Of course you can.
But the dead body the shapeshifter left behind is found, and Fringe begins their investigation into what caused this man to die and why does he have 3 puncture holes in the roof of his mouth. This is the call sign of a shapeshifter taking a face. And it does feel like season 1 of Fringe was kind of like, okay, we did a traitorous good guy a lot, and it was getting a little ridiculous. How can we do more traitorous good guys but make it slightly less the same thing? Shapeshifters. It's like they wanted to have more moles, but they realized the whole having moles on the inside thing was a bit bland, so now we have spicy moles. But the difference between season 1 and season 2 is firmly established here. While in season 1 we were fighting terrorists aware of the other universe, here we're seeing the other universe start to retaliate to the damage we have done to them. And the war is here whether we're ready or not. And yeah, it's a pretty interesting dynamic to have a war starting that was started by our side, but not really know known to our side that we started it, but as we're going to see, the other side has been waging this war we didn't even know we were in for quite some time. My favorite moment from this episode probably comes from when Charlie, the lovable Italian stallion that he is, visits Olivia in the hospital and can tell something is off, and we get this monologue from him.
My second year with Brooklyn PD. One night we get a domestic disturbance call. Partner and I go over at his house. I'm with the guy, right? And he's saying it's nothing, you know, just a little argument. My partner calls from the other room and says that we need an ambulance for the girl. Now, I just know the guy beat the crap out of his girlfriend, so I go for my gun, I get him on the ground, and I'm cuffing him. And I hear a gunshot from the other room. I turn around, and this bloody girl, brutalized girl, is aiming a gun at me. What I didn't know at the time was she just killed my partner. She fires, hits me in my chest. Anyway, I'm in ICU for 6 days, you know, in hospital for 2 weeks, kept on telling my wife. I'm fine. I was shaken, and I was scared. Now, if you're like me, you got a gun underneath your pillow. Peter called me. Hey, you can fool the doctors, kiddo. Can't fool me.
Charlie's friendship with Olivia is one of my favorite friendships in a TV show because it never crosses the line into romance. He respects the hell out of her, and they just genuinely have each other's backs. The writers really seem to understand that these two are just really good friends, and they don't mess with that at all. Now, back in the lab, Walter is investigating those 3 markings inside the mouth of the body left behind. Through more sketchy research Walter has done, he's able to actually kind of put together that these shapeshifters are here, because he apparently dosed a student from Harvard back in the day with an insane amount of psychotics, and they started seeing into the other universe and saw these soldiers who could steal faces. One of my criticisms of season 2 is I wish they hadn't figured out the shapeshifters were here so early on, because I liked, especially on the rewatch, seeing the shapeshifters basically introduced just right away in the cold open, and I feel like it would have put in a greater sense of paranoia for them to have been introduced and then the show just walk away for a minute and maybe hint at a shapeshifter being there for several episodes before there's any inkling from our team of actually knowing these infiltrators are here. But instead, in episode 1, Walter starts figuring out what's going on. And we also get something introduced in this episode that isn't developed too much, but it does allow Broyles to have some real shining moments of acting, and it's basically the US government asking, what is Fringe Division and why do you need so much funding? And in response, Broyles gives this fantastic monologue.
Philip, listen, we all have a job here, and we...
Yes, Senator, I have a job. The same job I have had in 3 administrations and 6 wars to defend our national security. And I assure you, we are not secure. Yes, sometimes the threat is familiar. But I have come to learn that sometimes it is far worse. And when it is worse, when the threat is unimaginable, that is when we are at the door. And you should thank God for that.
That moment has a lot of gravitas to it, but it's not entirely effective because the Senate committee is still kind of questioning by the end of it whether or not Fringe Division needs to exist. They need hard evidence. Now, we follow the shapeshifter in this episode for a little bit, and it becomes apparent that they are hunting Olivia. Whatever she learned while on the other side does not want her fully reporting back to the government, you know, our side, the war. And the shapeshifter does arrive in the hospital after taking the face of a nurse and tries to kill Olivia. Fortunately, the team figures out that she's the target and arrives just in time to shoot the shapeshifter, choking Olivia twice in the back, then see that it is supernaturally powerful and leaps from a hospital window fine after tanking 2 shots. This actually goes into a thing where shapeshifters are not human. In fact, they bleed mercury. A chase ensues, and Peter, the princess, and Charlie follow it into the tunnels under the hospital, and I think we all know it is coming because the three of them very stupidly split up. No one is dumb enough, especially trained FBI agents, to chase a shapeshifter into dark tunnels and then scatter. What? And here, Charlie is dropped on by the shapeshifter. We see some shots ring out, but by the time other agents arrive, it seems like we just have Charlie standing over a dead shapeshifter. But no, that is, of course, now the shapeshifter, and that is how the show killed off Charlie.
You know, and they ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
God damn it. Now in episode 2, we see Walter and Astrid are looking into Olivia's car crash, and Olivia is still struggling to remember what happened to her over there. And Walter tells Olivia, well...
You're here now, and apart from the obvious, you appear to be fine.
I appear to be?
No. Traveling to an alternate reality has its consequences. No, you'll be fine.
Not too much else is relevant in this episode. The Fringe element is a sheriff protecting a weird mutant baby monster, and faux Charlie henceforth known as, because he is not our real Kirk Avocado, he is Farley. Let's call him Charlie. Farley. Faux Charlie. Farley. That, like, not Chris, but Faux and Charlie put together. You get what I'm saying. And his new orders from the other side, now that he has inhabited the body of someone so close to Olivia, is actually to try and find out what William Bell told her before he kills her. And at the end of the episode, we see Olivia is sent to see someone who helped Nina Sharp get over her own PTSD, named Sam Weiss. And Sam, I'm pretty sure they didn't know where they were going to take his character when they started filming this, but he goes some wild places. But for now, he's just like her Big Lebowski, I'm going to help you get over your PTSD character. Now, episode 3, the Fringe element here is people turned into flesh bombs due to a radio signal. The only really important character details here are Olivia continues to receive treatment from Sam Weiss, and Peter and Walter finally work on finding a house so they can move out of the hotel they've been living in up until now.
I need my own bedroom. I woke up this morning to him singing an aria from Pagliacci.
Your father has a wonderful voice.
Not when he's doing jumping jacks. And did I mention he was naked?
Once they begin investigating the explosions, the team discovers a cop-turned-bomb was taking injections, and basically a former military was continuing bad experiments, and the Fringe team takes him down. At the end of the episode, Olivia pulls a gun on Sam Weiss, and somehow, because she was finally able to load and point her gun at him, that's a sign that her healing is doing better, because she also approached him without the cane. Even though she did have a dislocated hip, now they're implying that cane and the need for it was psychosomatic, because cliche early 2000s getting over trauma representation. It's not great, but it's what you get in this era. The episode ends though with Broyles interrogating the military, who actually shows that he was aware of these forces from somewhere else coming to attack us, and he saw his development of these bombs as, well, here you go.
You're going to eat that cheeseburger in here. Could you at least be a little discreet?
In episode 4, we see multiple shapeshifters from the other side have arrived, and they start stealing frozen heads from like cryogenically frozen people labs. I know there are people out there who pay to be frozen upon death, but do they do it for just their head? What the f? Walter makes a milkshake out of worms to try and jog Olivia's memory about her crash.
Walter, I thought that we agreed that this was a stupid idea.
No, you decided. I still maintain that the principle is perfectly sound. Why, it's called an experiment, Peter.
Thanks. I know what an experiment.
If Archimedes had never decided to take a bath.
She's committed to the cause. During the investigation, though, we actually have Walter pick up that there's something wrong with Charlie.
You're right, you look pale.
Yeah, I didn't get much sleep last night.
Oh, I may be able to help you with that. A little cannabis before bedtime does wonders, huh?
And Walter continues to get closer to the truth because he finds out the fact that the shapeshifters sustain themselves and need to feed through consuming mercury or by using some of the devices left behind to change shape. And once Walter confirms that they bleed mercury, that confirms the shapeshifter they thought they killed in the hospital isn't actually dead.
Excuse me.
Can I see the body that's bleeding silver now?
But they act like they don't know who it is when multiple of them know it is Charlie who shot the shapeshifter, and Charlie is the only person who was present there. How they don't immediately put together that it's Charlie absolutely, I do not know. Do they think Charlie just shot a woman who was left alive after turning into the shapeshifter? I don't understand how they don't piece together that it's Charlie. We do learn that Massive Dynamic is also working on one of the shapeshifter devices, and they found a way to essentially see the last face that it took, aka Faux Charlie, or Farley. Walter gets in contact with the former student he gave the ability to see in the other universes, and the only real important thing from this plotline is they end up ringing a bell, and it's the ringing of that bell that actually allows Olivia to recover the memories from going to the other side. And then we get to see the full conversation between Olivia and William Bell.
Willem, that's what you always called me when you were a girl.
I don't trust you, Dr. Bell. Or William, or Willem, or whatever cutesy name you think might appeal to my childhood instincts. It won't. Your company has been involved in, if not directly responsible for some of the most horrific things that I have ever seen. To say nothing of the fact that you just yanked me into a parallel universe to warn me about an interdimensional war that I believe you are responsible for starting. So what I want is not warmth or tea. It's the truth.
After recovering from this flashback, Olivia then gives Nina a message from William Bell, a 3/4 circle with cuts at the end. The symbol will be on the head of the person the shapeshifters are looking for, according to Nina. Nina then stresses the inevitable collision of the two universes due to the opening of a new doorway. The weakening Walter did inexorably linked these two universes, and so a collision like these two snow globes is bound to happen. Now, Farley, seeing that his face is about to be revealed, tries to just assassinate Olivia.
What are you doing?
This isn't even in the top 5 worst things that happened to Olivia. We are going to see how dark her life gets by the end of this season. Broyles debriefs her on the death of Charlie. He tells her the other shapeshifters found the head they were looking for. The other universe is succeeding in their mission, and it just feels like our Fringe division is so far behind. Now, episode 5 is a Fringe event in Seattle, and we see a man hallucinates demons and has crazy eyes while murdering people in his office. This is like the one Fringe event where I don't understand why they were called right away. Crazy eyes, yeah, is weird, and a guy going nuts in an office would make national news, but it doesn't seem like something that would immediately summon the Fringe crew. But while they are questioning him, the guy then has what seems to be another seizure, and then his hair goes white before dying in front of them. Now, I believe they'd be called. We do see though that Walter being so far from Boston is not coping well, and it just breaks your heart every time seeing him struggle so much.
The oven. Peter, I think we've got to turn it off at home.
Walter, we've never even turned it on.
You sure?
But Olivia and Peter stay in Seattle together, and their slow-building romance starts to play more overtly into the narrative, because it's season 2 of an early 2000s show, and these are two attractive, straight leads, so they're gonna romance, and you just know that. Goodbye, John Scott. You are never, ever gonna be relevant again. There's a couple more incidents of people going insane and insulting others, and it turns out it's related to a doctor trying to treat sleep problems in patients gone wrong. The doctor is actually the one doing it, and he's gone mad, and he's basically just feeding an addiction. It's weird, they solve it, not the strongest Fringe case from this season. The episode ends with Olivia visiting Charlie's grave though, and deciphering a note from him. Like, even more so than losing a romantic interest, I think it's because you see it so much less often in fiction. Seeing people break down in response to a friend's death just hits so hard every time. Oh, and then Peter has a nightmare of him as a child being grabbed in his sleep by Walter. I'm sure that's not relevant to anything we'll see later on. Now, episode 6 gets the award this season for the creepiest goddamn episode, because we see a shadow man is somehow turning people into dust in a way where you cannot tell they have been turned into dust until you give them a good old. This is a Broyles episode, which makes it special. It's not super relevant to the larger plots, but holy smokes, do I love this Broyles episode. Right after the title opening, Broyles is in a restaurant and notices a kid copying him, and he just kind of goes along with it, and we get this deranged ass smile from him from behind a menu. Broyles, that's not cute, that's scary as hell. But a call from work interrupts this adorable exchange, and we see he stands up and leaves so fast that the boy is confused. And I think this is actually meant to be like a little bit of a look into the other sides of Broyles that we don't get to see very often, because he's always in Lieutenant Broyles mode, and outside of work, he's probably a fully functional, well-rounded man. He just compartmentalizes a lot. It's just a small scene to give you a look into a character who you only usually see in one light, and I always appreciate those. Now, it turns out that Broyles has encountered the entity from the opening of this show before. In fact, this case ruined his marriage, apparently, and we see him visit his now remarried ex.
I closed that case. The one 4 years ago.
I'm happy for you. I mean that.
Thank you.
Do you want to come in? Have some dinner with us?
No. I'll let you get back to your dinner. Good night, Diane.
Good night, Philip.
I love Broyles so much. I'm not gonna go too deep into this episode because, as I said, it's not very important to the wider Fringe narrative, but the entity we are seeing is apparently some form of alien that latched itself onto a cosmonaut, and the brother of this cosmonaut is working the best he can to save his brother's life. He fails, and the entity kills him before being trapped by our Fringe team, and then sent back into space by the CIA? Okay. Episode 7 is one of my least favorite episodes because it just leans so heavily into cliches left and right. A little psychic boy goes on a crime spree, forcing people to murder for him. He got the powers by stealing them from his father's research, and his father works for Massive Dynamic. There's supposed to be this whole like, oh, the little boy's the hostage, but if you're paying attention at all, it's very obvious that it's the little boy who's the guilty one from the beginning. We get a somewhat important character beat for Walter here, where he is jealous of William Bell's success with Massive Dynamic when he has just been, stuck in an insane asylum for 17 years. How many times have I said that? Peter's taken hostage by the boy before stopping him, and the boy is apparently not given a harsh enough a sentence in Peter's opinion. And I actually agree with Peter at this point. Yeah, that boy is responsible for multiple murders, and apparently he's not gonna be locked up forever. The episode ends with Nina Sharp sending a message to William Bell, showing that the boy might have been intentionally dosed by Massive Dynamic, but that they're shutting down the project due to the attention this incident has brought to it.
Help me! Help me!
Episode 8, baby! It's an observer episode, meaning they're not just in the background, they're at the forefront. And interestingly, we get in the forefront a new observer we have not seen before. Update the count! That's another observer. Now he is taking measurements and watching a woman. He then kidnaps the woman, just swats bullets away from a cop, and gets in a car and drives off. He's not a passive observer, I guess, is the takeaway here. Hearing of this, Olivia goes to talk with Walter and Peter at their new home. And it is a lovely Boston home that, yes, heavily contributed to Kayla and I planning a trip to Boston, which, I'm not kidding, we're now moving to. Kayla and I are moving to Boston.
Best part of my day is when I'm at Dunkin'. You think that's sad?
Yes, very.
And that partially happened because of research in this show, and we fell in love with the city and just decided to move there. That's the announcement. Yeah, we're moving to Boston, so just never say I don't go above and beyond for a video. I'm about to relocate to Massachusetts because of the effort I put in here. Now, apparently, there was a security camera that captured the observer kidnapping this woman, and I give Fringe such a long leash when it comes to suspension of disbelief. I'm more than willing to buy into, yes, children being trapped in a building underground for 70 years with no way outside and still being a child and somehow having eaten like rats. But that leash reaches its end here because apparently this public security camera, just sitting out in a park on a Tuesday, records at such high definition and such an insanely high frame rate, they are able to slow it down and watch in frame by frame as the observer swats away the bullet. Remember in the opening when the observer kind of like glitched for a half second? I didn't actually mention that, Jillian. If you could just have that on screen real quick, or we're all gonna pretend like I mentioned it. Okay, play it now.
Stop!
That little glitch is slowed down on this $20 publicly available security camera so well, we watch him take care of a bullet. No. We cut to the observer though and see that he is holding the woman against her will and repeating her words the same way the other observer did to Peter. We get a fairly important scene in the broad strokes of things where Peter is pushing Walter of why the observer saved the two of them, but Walter really refuses to give concrete answers. But we finally get our first big lead on what exactly observers are due to Astrid looking into a notebook they found with some scrawlings from an observer. She figures out that the observers and their language are likely perceiving events in a different way than us. They have some form of like fourth dimensional perception where they're not able to see the future all the time, but they are certainly able to see the past and the future and the present in a more concrete way before them than we are. We then see a meeting of 3 observers talking about how the one from this episode stopping this woman from getting on a doomed plane has caused a problem. And to solve this problem, the observers are sending a hitman with a special gun to take care of it. Long story short, this woman had such a tragic life, but was such a good person that this observer took pity on her after essentially just coming across her.
Teams and divers continue to scour the wreckage. We will continue to bring you live coverage of this disaster as it comes across our desk. Representatives of Trovis Airport.
You were going to die.
In about 10 minutes, we will bring you live coverage just as soon as it happens. Right now, what you're...
I saved you.
How did you...
You're not safe yet. There is something I need to do. I have to go out. I would prefer not to gag you. But it is for your own protection.
He gives his life to take out the hitman right when Olivia arrives. Wounded, he teleports away to the back of a car driven by the observer we know best. They agree not to kill this woman due to the observer's sacrifice.
You made her important. She is responsible for the death of one of us.
The episode ends, and I really don't know how to feel about this one in the context of it kind of on its own. It's great, but in the broader picture, it does cause some confusing questions with what we learn about observers later on, but I still like it because, well, it might be a little bit confusing on the broader narrative. In terms of the emotional doubt we see creeping up within these observers, it does fit in. All of that will become a lot clearer later on, but for now, let's update the observer count. If you remember, we saw 3, one with the one we've already met, And then there's the one we just already introduced in this episode, so 2 more other observers, bang, bang, observer count updated. Now, episode 9 is pretty filler, but terrifying. Boats of illegal immigrants from China are infected with nightmare worms to then be harvested after they gestate in them to create a drug. It's so cruel and maybe mildly racist. I'm not qualified to talk on that. And I remember seeing the worms bursting from the mouth when I was a kid and just not liking earthworms for a while after that, because that's how a little child's mind works. Thanks, Dad. It's a total filler episode, but it does have a gut-wrenching scene for Walter, maybe the most pity you might feel for Walter throughout the entire series, because he goes to investigate these crimes with Astrid to Chinatown, but he's unfortunately separated from her.
Hello, Peter. It's Walter, your father, and...
Wrong number.
Hello, Peter. It's me, Walter, your father, and...
Was hast du gesagt?
Excuse me?
Hello?
I fear I may have dialed the wrong number again. My name is Walter... Number 5 bus hasn't stopped here for over 2 hours. Not that it matters. I used up all my bus fare to dial 7 wrong numbers.
你係咪同我講嘢啊?
Can't remember Peter's number. I know it's got 3 5s, a 1, a 0, and 2 7s, but for the life of me, I can't remember the correct sequence.
In this whole season, Walter has been struggling for independence, trying to prove that he doesn't need to be babysat by Peter all the time. And he fails in such a tremendous way this episode that he kind of has to accept that no, he needs to rely on Peter and the team. And what's worse is Astrid got hurt due to Walter giving away too much information about the investigation while they were in Chinatown. The case is solved and Astrid is okay, and this results in Walter at the end of the episode putting a tracker chip in his own neck, showing he has enough wherewithal to still realize that he is a danger to himself and those around him, and so implanting this device means he can never get lost again. On a personal level, this is playing into one of my greatest fears in life. I've seen what happens when someone starts losing their cognitive abilities, and it is a personal just, oh my god, something I have always struggled with and had paranoia around. And maybe this is partially why I am so sympathetic to Walter as a character, despite everything he's done. Something is happening to him that I have feared since my earliest memories, and it's portrayed brutally in Fringe at times. Now, Episode 10. We're about the halfway mark for the season, and things are about to escalate. Finally, we are back to seeing what happened to that severed head that at the end of that one episode we saw being reattached to a body, and it turns out that that body is now a walking man who's not super relevant to the broader picture of stuff, but I'm just gonna call him Evil Bad Bad. And how is Evil Bad Bad introduced? Well, doing one of the most evil bad things you could imagine. Operating on someone's brain who is awake and conscious and a mental patient in a hospital unable to defend themselves. Whoa. The weird part of this is we see his operation is interrupted after he extracts a chunk of brain, and the man he was operating on, thankfully, is saved, but then also sane after this foreign chunk of brain is removed from him. It turns out these patients were acting as living brain tissue preservers, and that someone put these chunks of brain within these people long ago. And now the other universe knows about this and is reassembling the brain pieces. For what purpose? We shall see. Right now, because the Fringe team, after checking Walter's visitation records back at the asylum, find out that despite him believing no one ever visited him, a doctor who was linked to this case did. And yes, the pieces of brain that are being harvested are pieces of Walter's brain that were taken from him. That is why his mental deterioration became so aggressive while he was locked up. Someone operated on his mind without his consent. And oh, the look of pity from Astrid here breaks my heart. Walter needs to have his mind checked, of course, after this, and we get this scene from him struggling with an MRI.
Maybe some Valium would help. Oh, I don't do Valium nearly enough. It's a good idea. I'll have 50 milligrams, please.
Well, that's quite a high dosage.
I have quite a high tolerance.
Yeah, Walter, I believe you have high tolerance. That is believable. And yeah, Joshua Jackson can certainly nail this role. I feel like I was too harsh before. It's another day of recording, and in season 2, he really starts to shine as an actor. And these moments where he's like concerned for Walter, they work really, really well. Especially because he is so held back in a lot of other scenes. He's really reserved, but he'll have an outburst about his father, whether it's positive or negative.
And the Valium will take care of any claustrophobia you might be feeling.
I'm not worried about claustrophobia, Peter. What do you think that man did to me?
I don't know, Walter. Well, we're gonna find out, okay?
Olivia then states this.
I don't mean to sound callous, but from what I know of your father, going crazy made him a better person. It certainly made him a better father.
Now, that is a questionable as hell thing to say 99% of the time. I would never advocate for claiming that someone's mental deterioration made them a better person. In fact, I think Olivia is wrong here. But in terms of a character beat for Olivia, this makes complete sense, and I actually really like that she says this because, one, Olivia is working with someone who she knows to be a monster, who has done terrible things, and she's also coming to like him as a person, and so I think she has to justify that in her own mind. She's got to grapple with the reality that this doctor, who she relies on to be able to save the world, is an awful person, or was at least, and so she has to make some leaps, and this seems like a very reasonable leap for Olivia to have made, that whatever was done to Walter's brain is why he is now acceptable for her to work with. Like, I actually love that line from her. Not awesome to say, and not factually correct, I want to make that very clear, but perfect for Olivia to have said. Walter is then kidnapped by the men who have been assembling his brain pieces, which I don't know how they did not have a protective team at Walter at all times at this point, but alright. They then connect Walter to tubes containing his brain chunks outside of his body and are clearly trying to make his mind access the memories and information that is in there. And even on rewatch, this moment hits hard for me, where the pieces activate, and for the first time in Fringe, we get a clear look at not insane Walter. The Walter who experimented on children with no remorse. The man who broke reality, Walter Bishop, destroyer of worlds.
It's working.
Where's my wife? Where's my son? You drugged me.
Yes. Now, I have a question for you. You once built a door that let you walk between worlds.
How are things on your side?
Oh damn, that hits different. That is an intimidating Walter. Confident, cool, collected, and deeper voiced. Now, he may seem very sure of himself, but after this team threatens Peter, he caves and gives them what they want. They escape, even though the Fringe team is arriving just in the nick of time, because very, very bad guy poisons Walter, and in exchange for Olivia letting him go, he then gives Olivia the cure. We then see Walter have to watch his brain pieces die in these tubes after he's disconnected from them, and he now knows he'll never get his missing brain tissue back, and we, the viewer, as well as other characters in the show, are left wondering whether or not that's a good or bad thing. And this is a complete victory again for the other side. They are running laps around our Fringe team, and Olivia debriefs Broyles and is clearly very frustrated, but Broyles assures her she's doing the best anyone could expect with what she is going up against.
And you saved Dr. Bishop's life. That's something too. Because despite what you think, you made a rational choice, not an emotional one. If you had captured Newton or even killed him, that wouldn't have been the end of this. But there's only one Walter Bishop. And we'll be meeting him before this is over. And don't be so hard on yourself. We're going to be needing you too.
But this episode ends with Walter having a memory come to the surface of his own, and that is who exactly took the pieces of his mind. It was not the doctor who was implied throughout the case, but instead William Bell. That's right, Walter's former lab partner seems to have betrayed him and broken his brain. From here we jump to episode 11, which is Total Filler, a town full of mutated people who have to stay within the boundaries of the town to hide. It's not a bad episode, it's just not important at all. In episode 12, every sci-fi show needs a quarantine episode, and this is Fringe's. There's a brain virus that makes people act aggressively as they attempt to spread the virus. Peter gets infected, but you know, they solve it, everyone's fine. Moving on.
Now, if you hadn't looked for the monster, you wouldn't have found it, and you'd still be happy in your beds, instead of being slowly digested in the stomach sac of the creature. But, with any luck, your sisters or your brothers might have heard your screams, and your endeavor will serve as a valuable lesson for them.
Excuse me, do you work here?
No, I'm a season pass holder.
Episode 13. The Fringe event here is, a lot. A surviving World War II Nazi who has somehow found a way to sustain himself to be still looking very young attacks Jewish families with chemicals. Why does he look so young? Because science. The episode ends with Walter straight up murdering the Nazi with his own tech, which is absolutely fine, Walter. Even Broyles is like, I should get you in trouble for this, but I'm not. Good murdering. Episode 14. This is where it escalates once again. The Fringe event here is an earthquake that has a bit of a strange result. It does. I'm so sorry to the British people in the audience for that. I'll never do it again. Governor? Keep that in if it's funny. I got no idea. Remember how way back when, before all that filler, I said the universes were colliding? That is the end result of that. This man fused with his doppelganger from the other side. Assemble the Fringe crew! Put the Fringe beacon in the sky! I have no idea what that looks like, Jillian. Good luck. We get a really funny character moment here where Olivia calls Peter, joking that he got an all-expense-paid trip to New York because that's where the Fringe event took place. Peter then reiterates that joke to Walter, and Walter responds so sincerely.
Walter, wake up. We just won an all-expense-paid trip to New York City.
It's fantastic. I've never won anything before.
Arriving on the scene though, Walter then explains what is happening. Once they get back to the lab though with the body of this man, they begin searching his body and they find some artifacts from the other side. And I don't want to offend anyone politically here, but I very much so agree with Walter's statement at this moment.
Richard Nixon on a silver dollar.
That's disturbing.
He got away with it over there. No, seriously, I really love these other universe details and they just continue to pile up throughout all the seasons. And so, yeah, if you enjoy that like I do, I'll make sure to include a whole bunch of like the alternate reality differences because I'm a nerd. There's also a toy here of a double-decker car, and Astrid asks if they have those over there, which is a detail fans will know. But Walter remembers something fairly damning. If something from the other universe comes over here, like the building that we saw fuse with the one existing on our side, that means something from our side must be sent back over to make up for the unbalance. There is no way to know though what building is going to be sent back over, though it has to be of a similar mass, which is a pretty hard thing to figure out. Fortunately though, we already know Walter has a way to see objects from the other side, and if a building from our side starts to be pulled into the other universe, energy from that universe will become visible in a way, and similar to what we saw with Walter's former student who he dosed heavily to make see the other universe. Olivia, being a Cortexiphan victim, does have this ability, though Walter is unsure how to activate it. For the best chance of doing so, Walter then takes Olivia back to her hometown and where he experimented on her, Jacksonville, Florida. And I'm sorry that Olivia's having to go back here more than it just being Florida, because obviously this is where the darkest part of her life probably took place. Actually, for what's to come for her, no, not the darkest part of her life. I keep foreshadowing heavily. Keep invested. We're gonna make it through. And finally, the Fringe team arrives at one of the creepiest locations imaginable, an abandoned summer camp for children that was secretly a base for Walter to carry out his vile experiments. And the episode really does intelligently present this as almost like returning to the scene of a crime. And a problem arises where not only does Olivia not have these abilities suddenly resurface being here, she doesn't even remember the camp. But while Olivia might not be able to remember, she certainly seems triggered by being here, because because she is continually antagonizing Walter for what he did, and I do not blame her. Walking amongst his crimes, so to speak, is a lot, even as a viewer. This continues to escalate between the two of them, and they have a fight.
You abused us, Walter. Me and those other children.
No, we were trying to help you. We were trying to make you more than you were.
Is that what you were doing? Or were you searching for answers to questions that you shouldn't have been asking in the first place?
I was a different man then.
I was a defenseless child.
Yes, you were. Yes, you were. Olivia, I think I'm starting to understand why the process didn't work. You are different. You're not that frightened child anymore. I thought all we needed was a heightened emotional response from you, but I was wrong. We needed a specific one. Fear. And you're not capable of that anymore.
Yes, it turns out this isn't working because Olivia isn't afraid anymore. And then we get this shot of Olivia in her childhood room where we know she accidentally killed someone due to what Walter was doing to her. And man, this show is shot so well when it counts. There is a lot of just typical early 2000s cinematography, but every now and then there seems to be this extra oomph of effort that really does set Fringe apart visually. But with this endeavor being an entire failure, the Fringe team heads back to New York to try and do what they can to figure out what building might get sent back to the other universe and save its occupants. It seems like a long shot though. They're doing desperate math with supercomputers to figure out what buildings could be of a similar mass to the one that was brought over here and fused, but Olivia begins to break down, visiting Peter as he's working with one of the computers, and the two of them seem to have their first romantic climax. Phrasing, that is, they seem to have their first romantic endeavor.
Peter. I'm scared.
Don't be.
What?
Peter, I'm scared.
Peter gets blocked by fear, essentially, because Olivia realizes she is afraid. She's afraid of failure. She's afraid of letting these people die. So she runs up to the top of the roof and begins looking out, trying to spot a building in New York from this skyscraper that could be glimmering. And she sees it. And while this is a tremendous victory in the moment, it is going to lead to one of the biggest emotional conflicts of the season around Peter. We're gonna get there. The clever of you have already put the problem together. Broyles and her have a debrief where he tells her she saved a lot of people, and Olivia responds,
We all did.
Dunham, this ability you've demonstrated, what finally activated it?
I think it was just time.
Another just great character beat for her. But that night, it turns out Olivia and Peter have a date planned, and Olivia comes to pick Peter up. But when Olivia shows up, this happens.
I'll go get my coat.
Olivia, please don't tell him.
And Olivia now knows the why of all of it. The look she gives Walter at the end there when he asks her, please don't. Like, she didn't think she could hate him more. But she also loves him. It's so conflicting. Episode 15 does have a Fringe event of sorts because it kicks off with us jumping back to the 80s and seeing Walter give a presentation to a room full of military men. But he pulls out a cell phone from the early 2000s. I'm sorry, what? It is from the other, more technologically advanced universe. He hadn't visited yet though, and instead just copied what he'd seen over there to create this phone. How he had done that is he created a window that allowed him to stretch the membrane between the two universes thin without actually violating it. We then get the alternate 80s Fringe intro, and it is a banger! Back in our time, we see Walter has gone to visit Olivia to try and explain himself. She's been ducking his calls and avoiding him due to knowing he's a child kidnapper, but Walter doesn't exactly respect boundaries and sort of pushes himself into her home and begins trying to tell the story of why he kidnapped alternate Peter Bishop. We flash back again to seeing Walter stalking Walternate. We see he is so obsessed with finding a cure for his terminally ill Peter that he's actually neglecting Peter and his wife. Peter is in possession of the coin that was shown to us in season 1, and Walter's wife just wants her husband to spend time with his dying child. Peter then offers Walter his silver coin, and Peter knows even at this young age he is going to die. Walter then makes this promise to his dying son.
You're not gonna miss anything.
And yes, then Peter pretty much just immediately dies in his arms. This breaks Walter. A funeral for Peter is had, and notably William Bell doesn't even bother to show, only sending Nina Sharp in his place. Walter then does something that Kayla and I, upon viewing this season, both agreed is super messed up. I didn't remember him doing this, but wow, on rewatch, not okay.
What is this? How's this possible? How are you doing this?
What I've been working on, Elizabeth. It's a window to another universe. Like ours, but different.
Don't do that. Oh my God. Like, I get you would think maybe it'll make her feel better seeing that our son is alive in another universe, but don't. Walter is continuing to watch Walternate seek his cure for his Peter, and Walternate does. Please tell me you noticed the Observer. We then cut to the other universe where we see observers leaving a theater after seeing Back to the Future starring Eric Stoltz, which for Back to the Future fans is such a fun reference. You see, Back to the Future was a movie from the 80s that was shot almost in its entirely starring Eric Stoltz, but they realized it just wasn't working and the chemistry wasn't right, so they then almost entirely reshot the movie with Michael J. Fox, and it is now being shown to us through this just brief visual gag almost, that decision was not made in this alternate universe. What a fun thing! It's just a fun little thing. They didn't have to do it, but they did it for us, and I love it. I can't stop talking in this octave. One of the observers, though, reports making his mistake. He wasn't supposed to distract Walternate. The observer wasn't supposed to be observed. Walter, though, knowing the cure, begins making it himself. He then builds a doorway to rip a hole between universes so that he can go save the alternate version of his son. Nina shows up to try and stop him, but Walter pushes on. Nina tries to physically stop him, but Walter falls through the portal that closes on Nina's arm. That's right, she didn't lose it to cancer, as she said earlier on in the series. She lost it due to Walter's actions. Having fallen through the portal, though, Walter has broken the cure he made, meaning he cannot give it to Peter. I'm not going to call him alternate Peter because he's just the Peter now. I guess I should have called the earlier Peter something else. We then see the Peter we've been following throughout the show playing with his silver coin in his room before Walter shows up.
Walter? What are you doing here? I thought you were working late at Cambridge. Walter, what are you wearing? Where'd you get that coat?
I think I found a cure.
What?
I think I found it. A cure for him.
you certain?
Yes, I believe so. I'll need to take him back to Cambridge, to the lab. I need to leave now.
Yes, yeah, of course. Right, Peter, darling, get up and we're going to get you dressed. Darling, let's get you out of this.
And imagine what Walter just did to this woman's mind for the rest of her life. She thinks right now her husband is taking her son to cure him and is only going to find out that it wasn't her husband, and she will have no idea what happened to her boy. Of all of his crimes, something about this specific action just feels worse in some ways, especially because of this moment.
Bring him back to me.
I promise.
Walter then opens the portal, but when they step through, the ice breaks. Walter and Peter fall into Raiden Lake. This is actually how they fall into the ice, and of course the Observer shows up and pulls them out. A bit different than the story Walter told, but it lines up with what we know. Walter wakes up in a car with the Observer. What does this mean? Stick around and find out for one of the weaker elements to this season of Fringe. Our universe's version of Walter's wife then comes and visits Walter in his lab, seeing that he has, yes, taken that other version of Peter she saw through the window. Walter fully confesses what he did and even begins to insist they must take this Peter back. But once his wife hugs her son, yet again, we know that's not happening.
He's not ours. I have to take him back. But I realized at that moment that despite what I'd promised, what I fully intended to do, that I could never take Peter back.
Yeah, we're gonna need to unpack that here. Time for you to edit those comments once again, goblins. I have a simple question though. Do you blame Walter? Obviously what he did is sick and vile, but the pain of losing a kid and then once again being able to hug, smell, be around your boy, would you have the strength to give him back? I don't think him going over to cure this other Peter was necessarily the most evil thing. I mean, he didn't know the full damage he was going to end up doing to the universe. It was certainly reckless and wrong, but I don't think it's evil. But him keeping the boy, that's evil. But it's something I think, especially anyone who maybe has lost a loved one, is going to be able to empathize with. Basically, what I'm trying to ask you all is, what was the moment he went too far? What I like about this episode, despite it just being a lot emotionally, is it humanizes Walter's crimes without ever acting like they weren't crimes. He's still just being painted as a kidnapper. That's why they put in the scene where the alternate version of his wife is like, be sure to bring him back, and he has to lie to her and be like, oh, I'm certainly gonna. It's remembering that what he's doing here is sick and twisted. It's human. I think the hardest people to judge in the world are grieving parents, and so, yeah, it reframes Walter in a way without ever excusing any of the crimes he did after this. I think it also, though, understandably sets him on a morally degrading path to have done those experiments, though. We're gonna see a lot more of that, too, in the future. Let's move on. Episode 16. How does Fringe follow that up? By focusing on more results of Walter's crime. Because it turns out someone is hunting people who have been dosed with cortexiphan, and whenever he touches them, they die horrifically. Convoluted sciencey things, it's a way for him to avoid dying to his own sickness. Olivia also tells Nina Sharp in this episode that she knows about Peter being from the other universe, and this exchange happens.
Have you told him? No. But I'm going to.
No, you won't.
What makes you so sure about that?
Because you haven't told him yet. And I'm guessing you've had any number of opportunities.
Well, I've had my reasons for waiting. This is the right thing to do, and Peter needs to know the truth.
Whether or not it's the right thing to do, I recognize a look in your eyes. I know that working together closely with someone can bring about feelings. I'm fairly certain that you're not prepared to lose him. You didn't come here today to ask me about a list that you already knew I don't have. And you didn't come here to announce that you were going to tell Peter who he really is. You came here to have me talk you out of it.
Never forget, Nina is the head of Massive Dynamic for a reason. She is also crazy smart, just in her own different way. Oh, and because this guy's hunting people dosed with cortexiphan, guess whose doorstep he ends up on? Olivia really didn't have to do a whole lot of investigating for this one. A fight ensues, and Peter shows up right around the time the killer was taken away because he was who Olivia called on her speed dial, which means that Peter's on her speed dial, and your boy likes that. Good for you, Peter. But yes, Olivia decides not to tell Peter about being from the other universe here. Though, when she goes to Walter's house at the end, Walter disagrees with her, saying Peter might not need to know the truth, and he puts forth that he needs to be the one to tell Peter what he did. We also have in this episode Nina and Broyles deciding to gather up, if they can because no lists were kept, all of the cortexiphan patients. Why they weren't already trying to do that, I have absolutely no idea. And now for episode 17. Debatably, the best not majorly plot-related episode of Fringe. This episode starts with a train car full of people dying as a man in a trench coat appears among them. As the train arrives at the station, a kid asking for change finds the bodies. The door closes before he can get off, and he is locked in there until the next stop. From here, we cut to Walter writing a letter to Peter telling him everything. He pockets the letter before heading out to investigate the train incident. On the train, we learn that all of the power from the batteries within the train are dead. Even the power from like the people's bodies, that's how this scientist is powering whatever he's doing. They learn of the man who left the train as well. Back in the lab, Peter notices something is off about Walter, and this is kind of playing into the whole theme of the episode about regret and trying to correct your own crimes. The FBI is able to track a man through surveillance cameras to a cafe where he spent a lot of time, and Olivia remarks this.
Guy kills a train full of people and then stops for a meal.
Of course, they're able to get his name from a receipt at the cafe, and then they raid his home, where Walter identifies the equations he's working on as being just crazy cutting edge. While they're investigating his home, though, the killer just arrives and starts protesting their raid.
What are you doing with my things?
Stop, don't come back.
Before activating whatever horrible stuff he's done to his body here and just disappearing. This resets the time loop. That's right, baby. This is Fringe's first time loop episode, and they utilize this for emotional character writing. Oh God, because this man starts to get to know our Fringe division. What I really like about the writing of this episode is they show us the man acts slightly differently every time he does his time traveling, which changes the investigation into him and how our team finds him. Like this time through, he actually speaks to the boy who is begging for change that gets on the train, which he didn't do before. And we also see him touch the handrail, leaving fingerprints, and that's how the Fringe division finds him this time. And because of these slight changes in this loop, Walter actually drops his letter to Peter before seeing it picked up by FBI agents and panically taking it from them. We raid his home once again, but this time Walter figures it all out sooner. Knowing the FBI is waiting for him, our traveler works at a different location on the device implanted in his body, seeming to experiment to try and perfect his craft in just the most painful way possible. With this longer investigation though, Olivia visits Dr. Peck, the scientist we're seeing do this whole time travel endeavor, former employer. This is at a university where he published theories around time travel. They take his papers back to Walter's lab, and Walter is impressed by the time traveler, aka Alistair Peck, which is just a really good name for an antagonist this episode. Alistair is an underutilized name. Good name.
I think I know why Peck is doing this. Arlette Turling was killed in a car accident 10 months ago.
On the 18th of May.
What if Alistair Peck is going back to save her?
Grief can drive people to extraordinary lengths.
But they are able to once again track down Dr. Peck, and Olivia somehow agrees to send Walter up there to talk to Peck due to their shared motivations. And I get the justification they're putting forth for Olivia to agree to send Walter up. I just don't believe that she would. But I'm okay with it because the result is just two fabulous actors playing off each other for some highly emotional scenes.
Took my son from the other side. I had never believed in God.
But it occurred to me that my actions had betrayed him, and that everything that had happened to me since was God punishing me. So now I'm looking for a sign of forgiveness. I've asked God for a sign of forgiveness. The specific one, a white tulip.
Tulips don't bloom this time of year, white or otherwise.
But he's God. And if God can forgive me for my acts, then maybe it's in the realm of possibility that my son possibly may be able to forgive me too.
Walter, God is science. God is polio and flu vaccines and MRI machines and artificial hearts. If you're a man of science, then that's the only faith we need.
With the FBI acting too quickly though and not entirely trusting Walter, our time traveler travels once again. We fast forward to essentially the FBI just breaking down his door as he's scrambling to write a letter before he jumps back in time one last time. Instead of landing on the train car this time, he goes further back in time to when we established earlier in the episode his fiancée died in a car crash. He then sprints through the city to not try and save her, but instead get in the car with her and die with the woman he loves. You might notice the car they're in that gets hit by the truck is a red punch buggy. Don't make the joke, Daniel. I get there's a punch buggy joke in there, especially with the no punchbacks, but you just don't want to make that joke.
Punch buggy! No punch back!
From here, we cut back to present time, where Walter is once again writing his letter to Peter, except no call comes in to force him to pocket the letter and head out to an investigation, and we see instead Walter walks to the fire and burns his letter. But he does have this interaction with Peter right before the mail arrives.
Walter, I know that you've been in a funk for the last couple of weeks. If there's something you want to talk to me about...
No. Something was weighing on me, a decision that I'm fine.
Okay. I'm gonna go hit the hay.
Damn, dude, he gets his sign of forgiveness from another godly level scientist whom heard his story and decided that it was time for Walter to stop blaming himself, at least for this one action. And what I really like about this is I feel like you can take it a lot of different ways. The most cynical being, this is just another egomaniacal crazy scientist who's seeing himself reflected in Walter and trying to give him some form of forgiveness so he can feel forgiveness for what he did, where he killed people time and time again. Yes, he undid it, but those people also died. Or you can take it a bit more kindly and see it as someone who, on a human level, heard Walter's story and decided that Walter needs to try and move on and just do the best he can as a father now. Or you can be a bit more generous and see it as a universal level force, creating a scenario where Walter did end up getting his white tulip. There's no right answer there. It's just very emotionally powerful and something I think a lot of viewers are going to walk away with different interpretations of, and that is just great science fiction. I know that wasn't the most wider plot relevant one, but I wanted to spend time on it because I just feel like it was a very good one. Episode 18, we're back to shapeshifters, baby, because we see even more shapeshifters enter our universe in their raw form, and they kill a kid and his girlfriend. But there's a third shapeshifter who, once the Fringe crew is investigating these murders due to the 3-hole punch in the mouth thing being found, they discover this third shapeshifter still as an embryo. And it's gross, just as gross as the shapeshifters out of the embryo are. These shapeshifters, though, report to evil very, very bad man, and it seems they are working on a time-sensitive mission. Though with that embryo not hatching, they are down a man. But Walter is able to successfully activate that embryo, and then the Fringe team interrogates the shapeshifter in its raw form, and my God, do these things look gross.
Tomorrow afternoon, what is happening at 3:31?
I'm sorry.
So what is happening at 3:31? We shall see. Because the shapeshifter dies and we don't know. What's important in this episode on a character level though is Walter falling apart due to the guilt of what he's done. Through more investigative work though, the Fringe team is able to find out what exactly Very, Very Bad Man is trying to do, and it seems to be bringing someone else from the other side over at a location where specifically a building does not still exist in our universe but does in theirs, to hopefully counteract some of the consequences we saw before. I'm not entirely sure how that works, but they're essentially filling in a bridge that collapsed on our side and not on theirs. Our side having poor infrastructure? Yeah, I absolutely believe that. They're able to arrive at the location, of course, right as this event begins. And Olivia does this.
We need to get on that bridge.
I'm afraid that's not possible.
I'm with the FBI.
You're the boss. Let me just check with the sergeant.
No. A cop wouldn't call the sergeant on a cell phone.
Olivia? What if his radio was just broken? She just domed a guy? Because likely it's a shapeshifter. Oh my God. But Walter, desperate to stop this from happening, takes a vehicle and drives onto the bridge, trying to activate a device they have built that would hopefully counteract them able to bring this person onto our side. Peter manages to get onto the bridge with Walter right as backup arrives. It's too late though, and reality begins shaking. The bridge from the other side begins to merge with our universe, and an agent who is still on the bridge with Peter is essentially reduced to just a liquid haze. And Peter sees a man standing on the bridge from the other side, and it's unclear whether or not he's made it over. As everything comes to a climax though, Peter is knocked unconscious. He wakes up in a hospital with Olivia standing over him, but that does not seem to be where his focus is, and he instead asks for some alone time with Walter.
I'm not from here, am I? You didn't just open up a hole to the other side. You went through. And you brought me back. That's why I was able to survive Newton's device. It's why I can't remember my childhood.
You were dying, Peter.
It's why my mother committed... Isn't it? She knew. Didn't she? And when I left, the guilt was too much for her to live with. The lie.
Oh wow, there was another grenade we didn't know about. That's right, there are even more consequences to Walter's actions that this show is just beginning to unpack. We cut from that moment though to seeing Mr. Very, Very Bad standing over somebody who, yes, successfully made it over from the other side. And they're needing to recover in a manner similar to what happened to David Robert Jones after he teleported. Yes, moving universes has consequences as well, similar to teleportation, just not nearly as bad. The episode ends though with it being revealed that Peter has checked himself out of the hospital. Remember way back when I said there's no way anyone would ever believe Peter's leaving? I lied.
You sit on a throne of lies.
Episode 19, baby. This is a adorable episode, but not very relevant when it comes to wider plot things. It does start out like this though. Just when I thought I couldn't like Walter anymore, he reels me back in with a stoned label maker montage. Walter, I also love Organization Win High. You're such a lovable man. In all seriousness though, Walter is not taking Peter leaving well, and Olivia is trying to find him, though she needs to take care of her niece who's been introduced a couple times throughout the show, and so she leaves her with Astrid and Walter while she continues to look for Peter. To fill up this episode, Walter then tells Olivia's niece a very adorable story about noir Olivia looking into all kinds of sci-fi stuff. It's really cute. It's also on a tour of playing another version of Olivia extremely well and distinctly, but we're just gonna move past it because it's a fictional story within our fictional story. Once the story ends though, Olivia comes back and tells Walter that her search for Peter has no leads. And the episode proper ends with an observer watching Walter arrive home and giving this warning.
The boy has not returned, and I do not believe Dr. Bishop remembers my warning. Yes, I am concerned too.
So what exactly has Peter been doing? Episode 20. Well, Peter is helping a random cop investigate weird killings and seeing visions of very, very bad man. And it's a fine episode. Like, yeah, it plays into paranoia for Peter, and it turns out some of these secrets he's telling this cop aren't actually relevant to the case that he thinks are, because no, it's not actually very, very bad man who's maybe doing these things, and maybe Peter's just insane. That's played up for effect. But at the end of the episode, Peter just basically helps solve a local type of kind of Fringe event. Except the actual end of the episode is pants-inducing because Peter is laying back on his motel bed, listening to a mixtape given to him by a woman who was killed during all of this, except very, very bad man, it turns out, is here. So you know how our side has a brain-broken version of Walter working for us. What do you think Walternet's been up to for all these years?
Hello, son.
Walternet is here, and he's mad about what happened, and he wants his son back. Episode 21 kicks off, and oh my god, Charlie's here! Charlie's back? Wait, the Fringe office has gotten a super upgrade. Who the hell is this new guy? And how is Broyles even hotter in a black tee? Who are you people? Oh. Welcome to the other Fringe division. If you thought Fringe was going to let the other universe just stay this faceless other that has no character or agency, you are dead wrong. They are fighting their own fight. They have been at war far longer than us. Because what we learn is that the other universe, ever since Walter punched a hole into it, has been dealing with a type of natural disaster, or Walter disaster, that we have never had to. Basically, many black holes have started appearing out of nowhere, requiring the Fringe team to deploy amber. Remember that amber that was used like way, way, way long ago? That's like a common occurrence in this universe. To basically seal a hole, trapping countless thousands, because these seals can't just be like a block. Sometimes they are districts, and the choice is either seal up thousands of people in this suspended state, or let a black hole expand on Earth. And it seems like this Fringe team is arriving right now at a possible black hole forming, and this one is going to be on such a scale, this entire team might die. They will not have time to evacuate. Couple little alternate universe details. I love that their version of an ID is called a show me. It reflects their more authoritarian state. But as this team is being told they might be trapped in amber forever because this is going to be a big event that requires more amber than just a simple building, something different is noticed about these readings.
Calculating.
Massive loss of life will result.
Really?
40 seconds to quarantine. Quarantine device unlocked.
God, and I didn't even update my will.
Massive loss of life will result.
Frank could just spend it all anyway.
In fact, all the readings indicating severe danger just go dead. And that's because this is not another natural disaster occurring. It is instead the arrival of a strike team from our universe.
Recommendation agent.
Gravitational molecular degeneration are decreasing but outside acceptable parameters.
Recommendation agent phone.
Calculating.
Getting into a rather sensitive subject, you may notice right away that the Astrid from this universe is coded to have, I think, autism. The reason I say that is the actress who plays Astrid apparently has a family member who has autism, and they use that real-life inspiration for how they portrayed the character here. It does play into some harmful stereotypes overall. It's early 2000s television, but I think in terms of giving this character their own personality and agency throughout these seasons, Fringe does a pretty good job, and I do really love that this actress is basing it off of a real-world family member. Okay, I hear you screaming, how the hell is our Olivia here? Don't worry, the show is going to jump back and explain all of it.
I can take you back where you belong, son. They have our coordinates. But if you come with me, you won't be able to come back here. You have to make a choice, Peter. Let's go.
That's right, Peter went willingly, and everyone's feeling a bit sad about that, though I don't think anyone's really going to blame him. Put yourself in Peter's shoes. It's a strange decision to have to make. But unsure what to do next, it seems our team needs a bit of a nudge, and an observer drops a piece of paper for Olivia to see, and it's the start of my least favorite thing in all of Fringe. It's not horrible, and I'm sure some people like this plot line, but it's not great. The paper dropped to Olivia clearly shows Peter in a machine with flaming eyes. She comes to show this to Walter, who now remembers the Observer's warning. The Observer had warned Walter to never let Peter go to the other side. Peter is somehow the key to ending our universe and saving the alternate universe. Walter is able to figure out a way to send a team over to the other side through a psychic link of using all the surviving Cortexiphan children. Yeah, they're really leaning into the X-Men thing here, and it doesn't really work for me well. Fortunately though, it kind of doesn't play a very big role moving forward, and you'll see why right away. Because Walter assembles a team made up of the Cortexiphan children we have seen be taken by Massive Dynamic, who have been working on ways to control their powers. We get a rushed montage of team bonding and this horrible line.
Well, if any of you have changed your minds, I will understand.
We were talking about on the way over here. Maybe you did damage us. On the other hand, maybe you made us special.
Hey Fringe, you've done a great job so far of never justifying child abuse. Don't start now. And the team successfully jumps over. And we're back to the start of the episode. What makes this episode still kind of work for me though is one of the team just dies right away on arrival because Cortexiphan is not really stable and they don't know entirely what they're doing. So don't count on this X-Men team really standing the test of time. Alternate Olivia, or Faux-Livia, as she is known among the fandom, and this Fringe team are summoned from this crime scene to see Walternate, who in this universe is, yes, the Secretary of Defense and has his office at the Statue of Liberty. That's just a good flex, like that, yeah, having your office the Statue of Liberty kick. Walternate has already pieced together that a strike team has been sent, and he orders the Fringe team to eliminate them. Okay, I can't call them the Fringe team. Like, I gotta give them a Faux-Livia name. What's the alternate version of Fringe? They're the Tassel team. And for those of you who are like, what do you mean? There's no way I would have done what Peter did. Well, we see Peter wake up and get to re-meet his real mother.
Peter. I've missed you so much.
Yes, there is a good reason for why Peter stepped over. That doesn't mean he's gonna be likable right now, and trust me, he's not. It's one of those things where I don't want to understand the decision Peter has made, but I do understand the decision Peter has made. A whole world, a whole life was stolen from him, and he's been given an opportunity to at least explore what it was. Now, while this world is more technologically advanced than our own, they have been dealing with a lot more natural disasters. And so I wouldn't exactly call this a better place to live as a result. And that's very clearly portrayed throughout the show. Speaking of that better tech, it allows the Tassel team to track down our Fringe team and apprehend them while they're seeking out William Bell. Whoa, 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 whoa. Isn't there an alternate universe version of William Bell too? No, apparently he died in a car crash unceremoniously years ago and is just not a factor. Our universe William Bell is the only William Bell. But yes, the Tassel team shows up and a shootout with our strike team begins. Nick, the guy who could affect emotions, is killed, and he has fallen in love with the woman who lights stuff on fire, and she essentially does a kamikaze fireball to take out New Guy and Fringe. Faux-Livia even opens fire on Walter, but she's called off when she hears of her partner being injured. See, he's fine. His eyes are open and he's breathing. just a little crispy. Because of the shooting though, Olivia and Walter are separated, and now things are looking dire. Not to mention, Olivia actually did successfully shoot Walter, and he is now bleeding out in a hospital parking lot. Cutting back to Peter, we see his mother is showing him drawings depicting a machine similar to what we saw Olivia get handed by an observer. Yes, this is still dumb. All of this is very dumb for Fringe, and I do not like it. But there's other really cool stuff going on, so let's get back to that. Olivia goes home, and we see she has a boyfriend who works in a hospital. He's about to leave for a week to help with some of the awful things that go on in this world, and he isn't super relevant. Bye-bye. You're like Diet John Scott. Bye. Now, the importance of this scene, though, is to clearly establish character differences between Olivia and Olivia. It goes beyond just bangs and a tattoo on the back of her neck. Olivia is a different person with shared experiences similar to Olivia's, but not the same, as you can even see with just how different the Fringe team is here. I just want to stop and give credit to Anna Torv's acting again. She just does such a good job, even with the way she walks, presenting a difference between Olivia and Olivia. Speaking of Olivia, she meets up with William Bell, who finds her staring in at Olivia's apartment somehow, and they're now together. Yay! The episode ends with Walternate looking at an already built version of the super machine, and god damn it, it just looks stupid. This is not Star Wars. Get it out! Alright, here we go. Let's wrap up season 2. The episode starts with Walternate being alerted of himself being checked into a hospital. But wait, I'm right here. How could I be? Peter then visits his real father at work, and again, the difference in performance shines. Not only in Walter and Walternate, but you can feel the difference between complete brain Walter from our universe and Walternate. John Noble really took care here, and I love that. The complete brain Walter from our universe seemed more malicious, more evil. Then there's our Walter, who is very remorseful and lonely, seems broken. Walternate, though, is manipulative and calculating. All three feel different, and I love that. Olivia and Belle find Walter at the hospital and are able to get him out before Tassel agents arrive to apprehend him. And apparently the tech upgrades in this universe also apply to drugs because...
Walter, can you walk?
I can dance if you like. They have absolutely fabulous drugs here, Olivia. I feel great. Oh, and look. Accelerated healing techniques. It's miraculous.
Okay, come on, Walter.
Now from here we cut to Peter and Walternate, and we get a glimpse into the extent of the damage done to this world by Walter.
When our two universes first interacted, it caused soft spots on the other side, but it was much worse here. The laws of physics were turned into mere suggestions. But I'm hoping you can change all that.
Peter has a reaction, though, when Olivia shows up and Walternate begins his scheming.
Do I have something in my teeth?
No, you remind me of somebody I know. But your hair's different. I think I like yours better.
God damn it, Peter, you're so hard to like. The show from here on out plays with ideas of identity quite heavily, and Peter is on track to learn a very hard lesson. This is not our Olivia, and I think Anna Torv even made our Olivia a bit more stern in this section of the show to really enhance the contrast between them, though you can absolutely just attribute that to what Olivia has had to deal with up until this point, making her a bit jaded, so it's all justified within the narrative as well. Just please keep in mind, Olivia and Olivia are both complete people in their own right, though yes, they are very similar, but you must recognize Olivia is just as intelligent as Olivia. So with that obvious connection made, Olivia helps Peter set up in his new apartment and then sticks around, because manipulation. Hence why a photo of young Peter with his family is left out for him to see. Olivia even attempts to play into his ego, in my opinion, telling him that once it's revealed he's back, he's going to be incredibly famous.
What do you mean?
Well, you're kidnapping. It's a famous story.
So I'm like the Lindbergh baby?
The what?
Nothing.
This might be where he's from, but it's not his home. And then Peter just tells Olivia a bunch of really personal stuff about Olivia.
What's she like?
Who?
Me.
She's a lot like you. Darker in the eyes, maybe. She's always trying to make up for something. Right some imaginary wrong. Haunted, I guess. Maybe she's nothing like you at all, huh? Thanks for the ride.
Hey man, betrayal of trust, what the f? Back with the remnants of our strike team though, William, Bell, and Walternate split from Olivia to try and go get the remnants of a machine that might be able to take them back to their universe, while Olivia goes to try and infiltrate and get Peter. Olivia gets home after a day of manipulation, and that is where Olivia is lying in wait.
Okay, I need you to take me to Peter Bishop. I assume that you know where he is. Don't. It's getting heavy. To Mom? Yeah. She's alive. What is she like? Well, the last few years have been hard for her. My sister died during childbirth. You have a sister too? And a niece. Ella. She's 7. Ella.
Wow, I guess we're all really similar and we can get along through the similarly shared experiences. You know, once the enemy becomes humanized, you can't pull the trigger, right? You understand, oh, they're fighting behind me. Never mind, everyone. Bathe in each other's blood. Violence is the solution. Oh, is Olivia getting choked out? Takes him out with a head wound. Character consistency. Olivia goes for the head. Also, the use of split screen throughout all of Fringe whenever doppelgangers are on screen together is pretty damn flawless, and for 2008 to 13 when this show was released, well above where the bar was set. Now it's time to go get Peter, and oh, holy Charlie is here. The guy you shot in the head. Well, you didn't kill him, but you killed the doppelganger of him, and here's another doppelganger of him. Oh damn, we already used Farley for fake Charlie, so faux Charlie being Farley wouldn't work. We need another name for alternate universe Charlatan. We're going with Charlatan. Now we cut to Peter working in his apartment on the machine for Walternate, and it seems to react to his presence. Peter begins to piece together that something's up here. And yeah, the show is really committed to this whole Peter is the chosen one thing. But then Olivia, disguised as faux Olivia, arrives with Charlatan, and this happens.
This was given to me by an acquaintance of your father, an observer.
An observer?
He gave it to me, I think, to warn me about what would happen to you if you ever returned here. He wants you to know that your friends are here and that they have come to keep you safe.
Hey, Liv, what the hell are you talking about?
Peter, it's me.
Thanks, I think I just figured that out.
Piecing things together, Peter's able to figure out that Walternate never wanted him to heal the universes as he put forward before, but instead was just looking to destroy the other universe. Not exactly the wholesome reunion with your father that Peter was looking for. Olivia admits she knew Peter was from the other side for weeks, but he still agrees to leave and come back with her, because of course he does. Not even the romance angle aside, universes could die if you don't? It's not really a question, Jack.
I have thought of 100 reasons why you should come back to fight the shapeshifters, to take care of Walter, to save the world. But in the end, you have to come back. Because you belong with me.
Okay, late night, I've had a couple drinks. This is like my 4th time editing this video insert, but I just gotta get this thought out and in here. Call me whatever names you want in the comments down below, but it doesn't feel entirely earned to have Olivia in this moment choose now to spill her heart out to Peter. She's a person who, yes, has made personal sacrifices for this team, but that ends up making you kind of wonder, is she just settling for Peter? Like, John Scott died not too long ago, and Peter's just the guy who's around. So are we just falling into that trope of the woman falls in love with the man who, like, helps her find personal fulfillment when she's been too dedicated to her job, that we've all seen a million times before? Or is Anna Torv kind of earning this? Like, I do feel the emotion in the moment because the performances are there. I just think, you know what, I'll just say it feels a bit out of character. I feel like she would have waited for them to get back and then been like, hey, let's address this reasonably, because I'm the person who, like, told Spock to go f himself because of the experiments he did when I was a kid. Which I do want to say, maybe my biggest insecurity with this video overall is that I haven't done justice to the depth of the character of Olivia. The narrative in these first 2 seasons focuses a lot on Peter and Walter, so I want to be sure to take the time to emphasize how much I appreciate Olivia representing someone carrying so much trauma from their childhood, but not presenting it in the most cliche or traditional ways. Olivia is not just shallowly written as depressed or anxious, which can be done well, but are often represented as the only coping mechanisms possible for trauma from childhood, which is not the case. Olivia is guarded, yet flexible with the world around her. She is understanding of the people she cares about while remaining critical of them, bluntly, to their face. Flaws cause cracks, as they do in us all, and yeah, the ghosts of her past are incredibly painful for her to deal with. To me, it's worth noting a character who's written to be traumatized, but not stunted by it. I find it really obnoxious how often trauma can be painted black and white. You're either over it or overwhelmed by it, when that's just not the case, I feel like well over half the time. All while staying grounded in a performance that feels ridiculously human despite the circumstances around it. Hats off to just everything that is Olivia in season 1 and 2 and Fringe, and back to the storyline. Olivia and Peter make it to the meeting point, and Belle meets Peter for the first time right as the police are arriving, because of course, like a whole army is descending on their location.
I supplied Fringe Division with a 76 model. This is the 77. Come on.
Walter and Peter inside begin working on the machine together, as William Bell and Olivia essentially have to take on just like dozens of people on their own. And things seem to reach a climax right as the Tassel team arrives. Olivia throws a grenade right as Faux Olivia steps into play.
You hear me? Dr. Bell.
Oh. Thank God.
What happened?
I used a grenade.
Retreating inside though, the team needs to activate the machine to get home, but the power source isn't there. Bell agrees to sacrifice himself to power the machine because his body has the power to do so, partially related to him traveling between universes, and also because I think the writers couldn't think of any other way.
Thank you, old friend.
Walter, you asked me why I took out part of your brain. I did it because you asked me to. Because of what you were becoming.
This is the clearest sign I think we get as fans that Walter was beginning to change before the pieces of his mind were taken. I think it definitely increased that process, but yeah, Walter, I think, was on the right path even before then. Our team then gets teleported back, and pause. Look at this shot. Anna Torv just here is giving enough for us to know what is painfully obvious, even if it wasn't so painfully obvious. That is not our Olivia. That is right, Faux Olivia got her orders and came to this universe. This is confirmed in a later shot where she goes to the same typewriter room we've seen the shapeshifters go to, and she gets her orders about how to continue on with her infiltration. I get that the show had to show us that to be like, get it? Because, you know, some people were dropped in their heads as babies, but I wish they hadn't. I wanted like the possibly not knowing to carry on into season 3, but all right. And as much as I don't like the Peter and the machine plotline, the Faux Olivia plotline we get as a result is more than enough to make up for it because of something you might have not even thought of.
you can hear me!
Please. Please let me out of here.
I know you can hear me! Please let me out of here! No!
That's right, Olivia, our Olivia, the real Olivia, is now once again a victim of Walter, except this time it's a version of him she has no idea how dark he can go. And in season 3, we'll see Walternate begin his experiments on her. Holy sh**. So audience, I think it's time for you all to edit those comments and give me your reviews of season 2, because god damn, it's not as strong as season 1 in my opinion. I don't think it's bad by any means, and season 3 is a step up overall. But in terms of Olivia having to deal with the worst things imaginable, ending on this note, I remember it just sending me and my dad into like, oh my god territory. But we will see how Olivia attempts to escape this hell and what faux Olivia ends up doing to our Fringe team in the next season. And that, my goblins, is my favorite sci-fi show ever. No, not the one I think is the objective best, but a personal favorite. Fringe, all these years later, still, I feel like is ahead of the curve in terms of where it was willing to go as a sci-fi show and how it examined emotional trauma and developed villains while never pulling out of the genre that gave it so much creative space to exercise in. The ending note for Olivia's character, I feel, is so well set up and earned, with her just breaking apart once again in the hands of the man who tortured her as a child, Walter Bishop, but not the Walter we know and love, who is trying to find some path towards redemption, full of remorse, but an unknown Walter, one who seems driven by revenge, who's willing to leave Olivia in what looks like solitary isolation long enough for her to completely break down. And with us knowing how hard it is for Olivia to even feel fear, you can't not have a pit form in your stomach, even on rewatch, wondering where season 3 is going to go with what will be done to Olivia, as she is not just far away from home, in another dimension from home, with no easy way back before her. In terms of my favorite Fringe concept though from season 2, I do very much so not want to pick one of the bigger picture ones like I did last time, but instead truly go with a one-off interesting Fringe concept. And for me, it's actually going to be the Shadow Cosmonaut Alien. I know I didn't spend too much time focusing on that one, but not only is it just a solid Broyles episode, but that shadow dust creating creature is genuinely terrifying in the episode. And there's sequences with like it threatening a child that just feel like high level horror. Name a more perfect genre duo than horror and sci-fi. I'll wait. If you're looking for me to take a more critical look at Fringe, I'm probably going to have a lot more criticisms to say when it comes to my coverage of seasons 3 and 4, which will be in the next video about this, which the better this video does, the faster it will be done. I have to essentially wait to make my money back from this huge project before I can continue on with the next. So please like, share, anything you can do to up the engagement in this video. It will genuinely help a lot in terms of covering this massive dream project for me. And if that one does well enough, I'll even cover season 5, which is probably the most flawed, but one that I still really enjoy on like a schlocky, just fan service level, in its own third independent bonus video as well, if the first two do well enough. My like pipe dream is this sparks like a revival of people looking back on Fringe like so many other YouTubers have done with their deep dives into shows that are just well worth a watch that maybe have not gotten the attention they deserve in the streaming binge era. Which leads me to my final note on Fringe in this video that I want to reiterate again for anyone who might be on the fence. I think Fringe is better than ever now because of bingeability. It is so much easier to keep it all straight and consumed in your mind if you're just burning on through it. So that's my last little note to leave on there. And it wouldn't be one of my videos without a handheld iPhone recorded in segment, because I also want to end this video by just giving the biggest thank you to my editor, Jillian. She has just done an absolutely sensational job of essentially watching through the first 2 seasons of Fringe for the first time by skimming them. And Pips and I want to just say a big additional thank you to Jillian for the hard work put in here. That is just elevating this video above and beyond what I could have done on my own. So thank you, Jillian, so much. All your stuff on screen now. That's the one edit for this part I'm going to ask you to do because I don't know all the links you want to use. For everyone else who's looking for an editor who I recommend 11 out of 10 times. That's right, Jillian's so good they break the laws of physics. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Join the Patreon if you'd like to see monthly vlogs here, get extra bonus early looks at future projects like this, vote on which books I might be reading in the future, and so many other fun community things. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.